Chapter 1495, Kunlun Race. Chapter 1495, Kunlun Race. The intruder was not coming from the entrance they entered, but from another direction. The three of them had yet to explore the secret ground and did not know where that direction led to. Let's go and take a look. Extreme Fire used his spirit consciousness to send a voice transmission and stood up with Nian Qi stealthily, heading in the direction of the intruder without alarming Su Zimo, who was still cultivating. As they advanced along the passage, they could even see some corpses on the ground. Those were the people who died in the past. Suddenly, both of them stopped in their tracks and exchanged glances. In a flash, they arrived at a dark corner and retracted their auras to hide. Chaotic footsteps sounded from afar. It sounded like there were at least a dozen people. The auras released by those people were extremely powerful. Extreme Fire and Nian Qi exchanged glances with grim expressions. The two of them could even sense the aura of a half-martial ancestor among the dozens of auras. However, they had encountered countless battles and killed many half-martial ancestor experts at the outer perimeter of the Kunlun ruins as well. Since both their cultivations had advanced, there was naturally no fear in their hearts as they continued listening. God's messenger, it's all thanks to you that we were able to dispel the formation outside. That's right. This formation has been in the Kunlun ruins since the ancient era. However, no one has been able to dispel it all these years. Two flattering voices sounded. Extreme Fire and Nian Qi nodded to themselves. From the looks of it, those people should be from the Kunlun ruins. It was extremely likely to be the Kunlun race. Thereafter, another person said, "It's nothing much. Back in my place, the Tao of formations has been passed down for a long time. I'm quite accomplished at it." Extreme Fire and Nian Qi frowned at the same time. The person who spoke later was clearly the God's messenger. However, there was something strange about the way this God's messenger spoke. His tone was weird, and his pronunciation was not precise. Extreme Fire and Nian Qi could only tell what he meant after listening carefully. Who set up this formation? The God's messenger spoke once more. This person is very powerful. If not for the fact that it has been a long time and some of the formation eyes were destroyed, it would have been difficult for me to dispel this. I heard that she's a woman from Tianhuang Mainland back in the ancient era. Someone at the side said, "It's because of this Kunlun barrier that she's the only one who could enter the Kunlun ruins and leave alive after all these years." When she heard that, Nian Qi's heart skipped a beat. The person continued, "Nobody knows who that woman is. She's a mystery." Although those people did not know, Nian Qi knew. That was because the storyteller had once said that Fairy Ling Long had entered the Kunlun ruins. There were few records about the Kunlun ruins in Enigma Palace. Those precious records were left behind by Fairy Ling Long. The woman that those people referred to came from the ancient era and happened to match Fairy Ling Long. In other words, the owner of this secret ground was Fairy Ling Long of the past. Only Fairy Ling Long could set up such a complicated terrain at the entrance and set up a supreme formation at the other end that the Kunlun race could not dispel. Even the God's messenger who dispelled the formation admitted that he would not have been able to dispel the formation if it was not for the fact that it was too long and some of the formation eyes were destroyed. Extreme Fire was not present when the storyteller recounted Fairy Ling Long's past. Nian Qi sent a voice transmission secretly with her spirit consciousness to inform Extreme Fire about this matter. However, both of them were puzzled at the same time. Why did Fairy Ling Long set up such a secret ground? What happened in this secret ground back then? Someone said, "The mystery is about to be resolved. We've already entered this place and will definitely be able to discover traces of that woman." Back then, experts of our Kunlun race hunted down that woman. To think that all of them would die here. The Kunlun clansmen walked in with corpses on their way. "Look, over there." Suddenly, someone exclaimed. "So many dermic weapons. There are also many elixirs, cultivation techniques, and secret manuals. Those are all treasures. Heavens! So, the legend is true." The Kunlun clansmen exclaimed. "What's going on?" The voice of the God's messenger sounded. Immediately, a Kunlun clansman replied, Legend has it that after that woman entered the Kunlun ruins, she snatched away a large number of treasures from the Kunlun ruins. There were countless dermic weapons, elixirs, cultivation techniques, and treasures. To think that all of those treasures would be preserved in this secret ground. At that point, Extreme Fire and Yin Qi's hearts skipped a beat. First, it was inevitable that they would be shocked upon hearing that news. Second, the two of them were even more puzzled. They could not understand why Fairy Ling Long would leave so many treasures in this secret ground instead of taking them away. There's people here. Suddenly, the god's messenger said. Immediately after, Extreme Fire and Yin Qi felt a bedazzling light beam shining towards the corner they were hiding in. Boom! Boom! The wall that shielded the two of them collapsed instantly. Their figures were completely exposed. Instantly, gazes landed on the two of them with terrifying killing intent. The atmosphere within the secret ground instantly turned tense. Extreme Fire swept his gaze. There were a total of 16 Kunlun clansmen opposite him. Although they were all in human form, it was clear that they came from different races and the auras they emanated were different as well. The attire of the Kunlun race was similar and only a single person in the crowd wore a wide white robe. Unlike others, he looked striking. If Extreme Fire was not wrong, this white-robed man should be the god's messenger that the other Kunlun clansmen spoke of. Yin Qi's gaze landed on the white-robed man as well. For some reason, she felt a sense of familiarity from the white-robed man. The white-robed man also looked at Yin Qi with a deep intent in his eyes. Neither Extreme Fire or Yin Qi could sense the cultivation realm of the white-robed man. It was hazy, as though it was covered by something. They were in a gigantic secret chamber with various treasures stacked on the sides. There were even some elegant words on the wall that were covered in dust. It was unknown what they were. Given the current situation, neither Extreme Fire nor Yin Qi dared to divert their attention to read and merely scan the place. Intruders. The only half-martial ancestor of the Kunlun race opposite stood out and looked at Extreme Fire and Night Spirit with a ferocious gaze as he shouted, "Outsiders have arrived." The white-robed man murmured in deep thought. In other words, there's a high chance that the other end of this secret ground leads to Tianhuang Mainland. That's right. The eyes of many Kunlun clansmen lit up as well. The Kunlun half-martial ancestor could not help but exclaim, "That woman is way too powerful. She could actually create a passage under the envelopment of the Kunlun barrier." There was a Kunlun barrier in the Kunlun ruins. The people inside could not get out, and neither could those outside get in. However, the existence of this secret ground shattered that fact. Chapter 1496, Fierce Battle. Chapter 1496, Fierce Battle. Haha. The Kunlun half-martial ancestor roared in laughter. Since we know of this passage, we can leave the Kunlun ruins. That's right. Another Kunlun clansman nodded. We can finally leave this place and return to Tianhuang Mainland. We'll have a chance to advance to the Mahayana realm and become true patriarchs, breaking free of the restraints of heaven and earth. Due to the terrifying primordial war in the Kunlun ruins, there were forbidden regions of divine powers left behind. Mahayana patriarchs would cause a divine power storm upon entering. It was even more impossible for anyone to advance to the Mahayana realm in the Kunlun ruins. That was because as long as one comprehended divine powers, a divine power storm would be formed. This meant that even if one managed to advance to the Mahayana realm successfully, they would die immediately and be shredded by the divine power storm. Everyone, we are indeed from Tianhuang Mainland. However, we bear no ill intentions towards you guys in the Kunlun ruins. Extreme Fire had a calm expression and cupped his fists politely without engaging the Kunlun clansmen recklessly. The Kunlun half-martial ancestor sneered, "Outsiders should be killed without mercy." Kill them. The Kunlun half-martial ancestor waved his hand casually and did not take Extreme Fire and Yin Qi seriously at all. Extreme Fire's expression turned cold as well. In Tianhuang Mainland, he was also a mighty figure who could dominate over an entire area. After his rebirth and a few battles, he was even more famous. He was polite because he did not want to have a conflict with the Kunlun race the moment he arrived at the Kunlun ruins. However, since the Kunlun race wanted to kill him, he would not fear them either. Humph. Extreme Fire sneered as well. You'll have to see if you have the capabilities to kill me. Before his sentence was finished, 2 Kunlun mighty figures had already arrived. One of them extended a hairy, rough hand and slapped Extreme Fire's head. Beast, how dare you act so brazenly before me? Extreme Fire hollered and his glabella shone. A scarlet tripod flew out and smashed towards the Kunlun mighty figure. The Kunlun mighty figure realized how powerful it was as well and reacted extremely quickly. He changed tactics at the last moment and punched towards the incoming tripod with his powerful body. Boom! There was a loud bang. The fist of the Kunlun mighty figure collided with Extreme Fire's destiny dermic weapon. Howl! The Kunlun mighty figure shrieked with a pained expression. His fist collided with Extreme Fire's destiny dermic weapon, and his tendons and bones felt like they were about to split. The pain was unbearable, and his palms swelled instantly. It was not over yet. Raging flames burst forth from the scarlet tripod and surged towards the Kunlun mighty figure's fist. The fur on the arm of the Kunlun mighty figure was burned to ashes instantly. The intensity of the flames even burned that person's flesh. Demonic chi rumbled as fresh blood splashed onto the flames. However, the scarlet flame did not show any signs of extinguishing and intensified. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the Kunlun mighty figure. Roar! The Kunlun mighty figure roared and channeled his bloodline to its limits, wanting to transform into his true form. He was not human. His combat strength could only be unleashed to its limits in his true form. However, Extreme Fire did not give him that chance at all. Extreme Fire grabbed with his palm and instantly, an incomparably rich dermic power gathered in his palm, forming a spear that burned with flames. The spear was completely red and burned through by the flames. Swoosh! Extreme Fire tossed in reverse. The spear turned into a red streak of light and pierced the person's chest, bursting forth with terrifying flames instantly. The flames burned from the inside out. In a few breaths, the Kunlun mighty figure's organs were burned to ashes. The person struggled and shrieked in the raging flames in a hysterical manner. However, he could not endure through it eventually. The pain on his body was unbearable and his essence spirit broke out. However, it was devoured rapidly by the flames and turned into ashes, dying on the spot. Although they were both at the conjoint body realm, this Kunlun mighty figure could not last 3 rounds against Extreme Fire. Another conjoint body mighty figure that lunged towards Nian Qi was secretly alarmed when he saw that. He did not dare to be careless and had already reverted to his true form in midair. Roar! It was a demon beast that resembled a dhole. However, the bloodline aura of this demon beast was much more terrifying than dholes. Its gaze was vicious and extremely violent. The demon beast was covered in scales from head to toe and had sharp claws and fangs. It was agile and possessed shocking speed. This was the almost extinct ferocious beast, the Yazi, in Tianhuang Mainland. The Yazi was not only violent and bloodthirsty, it was also extremely vengeful. It would definitely bear a grudge against anyone that offended it. The Kunlun ruins was probably the only place with such a powerful ferocious beast. The Yazi transformed into its true form and its blood chi surged into the skies. Arriving before Nian Qi, it opened its mouth and bit towards her. Nian Qi looked extremely weak, and her body was not even as thick as one of the Yazi's arms. That single bite could rip Nian Qi apart instantly. Not far away, the white-robed man looked at everything with interest and a fake smile. Nian Qi's expression was calm, and there was no hint of fear in her eyes. The moment the Yazi lunged forward, she attacked. Boom! Boom! The sound of a tsunami echoed from Nian Qi's body. Golden blood chi surged and surged into the skies, suppressing the bloodline of the Yazi instantly. Nian Qi extended her fair and slender palm and pushed down on the top of the Yazi's head. Boom! The ground trembled and a huge pit was smashed out by the Yazi's head. The Yazi's mouth was filled with blood, and its sharp teeth were mostly shattered. Mm. The Kunlun half-martial ancestor frowned slightly and murmured, "The bloodline of the god race?" Instinctively, he glanced at the white-robed man. The white-robed man smiled gently. "It's just a remnant of the god race with an impure bloodline." After a brief pause, he continued, "However, that woman is extremely talented. It's indeed rare for her to be able to cultivate to such an extent given that she only has half the bloodline of the god race." After the white-robed man said that, the battle on the other side came to an end. The Yazi wanted to struggle and stand up. However, it could not break free from the suppression of Nian Qi's palm. It was as though the thing that was suppressing him was not a palm, but an unshakable 100,000 mountains. Poof! Exerting strength in her palm, a divine light burst forth and penetrated the Yazi's head instantly. The massive body of the pure-blooded ferocious beast froze for a moment before slamming heavily onto the ground, creating dust clouds as it died on the spot. Given extreme fire and Nian Qi's current combat strength, there were very few people who could defeat them in a one-on-one fight at the conjoint body realm. Their combat strength could even suppress some half-martial ancestor experts. Swash, swash, swash. Apart from the white-robed man who was motionless, the remaining 13 Kunlun clansmen, including the Kunlun half-martial ancestor, stood out and surrounded extreme fire and Nian Qi. Chapter 1497, 9 Neonate. Chapter 1497, 9 Neonate. Roar. Howl. The 13 Kunlun clansmen reverted to their true forms and were all various primordial ferocious beasts. Some of them looked familiar, but some of them had long gone extinct in Tianhuang Mainland. None of them were human. According to Fairy Ling, the Kunlun race was fused from the races that survived the Primordial War. During the Primordial War, the human race was the weakest among the 10,000 races and was enslaved. They did not even have the rights to participate in the Primordial War. Therefore, there were almost no humans in the Kunlun race. The Kunlun half-martial ancestor was a 9 Neonate. The 9 Neonate was a pure-blooded ferocious beast and was extremely violent. With 9 heads that resembled strange snakes, each time it opened its mouth and howled, the sounds of infants crying would echo in a bewitching manner. Back in the elementary ancient battlefield, Su Zimo encountered a 9 Neonate. However, this 9 Neonate had already cultivated to the half-martial ancestor realm and was much stronger than the one in the elementary ancient battlefield. Hoo hoo hoo! The 9 Neonate roared into the skies and let out an infantile cry. Extreme fire and Nian Qi frowned and felt uncomfortable. Their blood qi surged and they could not suppress it. The dermic power of the 9 Neonate was extremely high, and a single sound domain secret skill had already affected extreme fire and Nian Qi. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, the other 12 conjoint body ferocious beasts charged forward towards extreme fire and Nian Qi. The ferocious beasts rammed wildly, and the ground quaked violently with a terrifying might as though it could rip extreme fire and Nian Qi into pieces. Swoosh! Extreme fire had a grim expression as he conjured hand seals repeatedly with both hands. Instantly, 3 scarlet flames burned beside him. 3 balls of flames revolved around him slowly. Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. If it was only against 1 or 2 conjoint body mighty figures, the dermic art of the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern was enough to protect him. But now, 12 conjoint body ferocious beasts had lunged forward with a half-martial ancestor 9 Neonate, watching keenly waiting for an opportunity to strike. Extreme fire did not dare to hold back either. Condense. He hollered, and the dermic art in his hands changed once more. 3 scarlet flames gathered rapidly. A blaze surged. The Samadhi Dao fire descended. Extreme fire pointed forward, and the Samadhi Dao fire swept towards 9 conjoint body ferocious beasts at the front. Sensing danger, some of the ferocious beasts stopped in their tracks hurriedly. Some of them shifted horizontally rapidly with their agile movement techniques and avoided the range of the Samadhi Dao fire. Only 3 ferocious beasts with massive bodies and relatively sluggish movements were unable to dodge and were enveloped by the Samadhi Dao fire. Ah, ah, ah. Instantly, the 3 ferocious beasts let out tragic cries. The flesh on their bodies melted rapidly and blood gushed out before it was burned into nothingness by the Samadhi Dao fire. Boom, boom. Right then, from the 9 Neonate at the side, 4 of its heads swayed and opened their mouths. Suddenly, a series of turbid torrents surged down and splashed onto the 3 ferocious beasts. Like galaxies of the 9 heavens, the 4 torrents rained down in a terrifying manner. Shing! The 4 torrents collided repeatedly against the power of the Samadhi Dao fire. This was a fight between fire and water. Fire and water countered each other. However, whether water could extinguish fire or fire could incinerate water depended on the strength of the 2 powers. The 2 powers were in a stalemate. If extreme fire and the 9 Neonate were to fight head-on, it would be nothing much. However, the battlefield of the fight between the Samadhi Dao fire and 4 torrents was on the bodies of the 3 ferocious beasts. The 3 conjoint body ferocious beasts were in immense pain after enduring the Samadhi Dao fire. Now that they were gushed by the torrents, they died before long without corpses remaining in the fight between fire and water. Intruders! The 9 Neonate shrieked, "You've angered me." The 9 heads of the 9 Neonate shone with endless rage. Suddenly, the 9 heads moved at the same time and opened their mouths, spitting out flames. Torrents interweaved into a destructive fire and water net that enveloped extreme fire. The flames even carried a nauseating stench. "Be careful, the flames are poisonous," Nianqi reminded hurriedly. Extreme Fire realized it quickly as well with a grim expression and channeled his destiny dermic weapon to defend. At the same time, Extreme Fire conjured hand seals repeatedly and condensed dermic arts to charge at the fire and water net, wanting to tear a hole through it. However, the fire and water net was the 9 Neonates' innate divine power. If their cultivation realms were similar, Extreme Fire would definitely be able to tear this net apart. But now that the 9 Neonate was a half-martial Ancestor expert, its dermic powers were boundless and endless. There was no way to tear the fire and water net apart. Just as the fire and water net was about to descend, Nianqi arrived beside Extreme Fire in a flash the moment she killed a conjoint body ferocious beast. Boom! She channeled her bloodline and released her bloodline phenomenon right away. Behind her, a gigantic pyramid appeared. It was ancient and mysterious with countless mortals kneeling beneath it, praying piously. Standing at the top of the pyramid, Nianqi was like a god of that world. When he saw that, the white-robed man's gaze intensified and he nodded to himself. "Senior, defend against the other Kunlun clansmen while I deal with this 9 Neonate," Nianqi said swiftly. Shing! The pyramid surged into the skies and tore the fire and water net apart instantly, suppressing the 9 Neonate. "Ah!" The 9 Neonate shrieked, "How dare you!" The pyramid descended and ruptured 2 of the 9 Neonates' heads. Flesh flew and brain juices flowed onto the ground in a frightening manner. However, in the blink of an eye, the 2 heads of the 9 Neonate regrew. Although conjoint body mighty figures could regrow severed limbs, they would definitely not be able to regrow their heads. However, it was different for this 9 Neonate. The 9 Neonate had 9 heads, and it would not die even if 8 of them fell off. Its essence spirit could be shifted freely within the 9 heads. It would not die as long as one of them was not destroyed. Nianqi controlled the gigantic pyramid and strode forward, causing it to descend once more. At the same time, she used both her hands and legs to conjure dermic arts and secret skills. In the blink of an eye, she released a torrential storm of attacks on the 9 Neonate. Poof, poof, poof. The 9 Neonates' heads exploded one after another. However, they regrew before long. During a most dangerous moment in their fight, the 9 Neonate lost 8 of its heads and was nearly killed by Nianqi on the spot. Even the 9 Neonate, who was a half-martial ancestor, was completely suppressed by Nianqi. On the other side, there were only 7 conjoint body ferocious beasts left. The combined attacks of those ferocious beasts could not defend against extreme fire's killing intent. God's messenger, please attack. The 9 Neonate could not hold on any longer and cried for help. Fufu. The white-robed man at the side smiled gently and extended his palm slowly. His blood chi surged with a blinding golden light as he said indifferently, "It's time to end things." Chapter 1498, God Race Half-Martial Ancestor. Chapter 1498, God Race Half-Martial Ancestor. When she saw the golden blood chi surging on the white-robed man's arm, Nian Qi's expression changed as she exclaimed, "God Race." She was extremely familiar with that bloodline. There was no doubt that the white-robed man was from the God Race. However, how could there be a God Race being in the Kunlun ruins? The Kunlun ruins had the existence of the Kunlun barrier. If it sensed a God Race being entering, it would turn extremely berserk. Nian Qi was nearly killed by the power of the Kunlun barrier. In other words, the white-robed man could not have entered from outside. Could he be a descendant of the God Race that survived the primordial war? However, if that was the case, why would the Kunlun race be so respectful to this person and address him as God's messenger? Furthermore, for some reason, Nian Qi felt that this person was different from some of the God Race beings she had seen before. As the white-robed man's blood chi surged, his black hair transformed into his long golden hair rapidly. A half-martial ancestor? The white-robed man was a half-martial ancestor expert. The white-robed man did not have any storage bags on him either. However, a gigantic sword suddenly appeared in his hands. It was a two-handed gigantic sword. Such a weapon was extremely rare in the cultivation world. Typically, the sword of sword cultivators specialized in movement. Only the God Race would use such a two-handed gigantic sword. Little girl, you're still too inexperienced. The white-robed man smiled gently and strode forward. Gripping the gigantic sword with both hands, he raised it high and his blood chi surged as a blinding golden light burst forth from the sword. Under the illumination of the golden light, this God Race being was like a true god, unexcelled in the world. Extreme Fire's heart skipped a beat. In front of this person, he even had an uncontrollable thought of giving up all resistance. With a grim expression, Nian Qi controlled the pyramid behind her and charged towards the white-robed man. Slash! The white-robed man shouted. Gripping the sword with both hands, the gigantic sword shone brightly and slashed towards the incoming pyramid. Boom! There was a deafening bang. The entire secret chamber shook violently and dust billowed as everyone's vision turned blurry. Crack! 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 Cracks appeared on the mysterious and majestic pyramid, growing larger as they covered its entire body rapidly. With a loud bang, the pyramid dissipated into emptiness on the spot. Nian Qi's bloodline phenomenon was sliced apart by the white-robed man. Her body swayed and blood oozed from the corner of her lips. However, her eyes were still filled with fighting spirit. Swoosh! In a flash, Nian Qi left a series of afterimages on the spot and lunged towards the white-robed man at an extremely fast speed. You want to engage in melee combat? The white-robed man smirked and did not mind at all. Swinging his sword with both hands, he attacked widely. However, there were almost no openings and his attacks were ferocious. Nian Qi's movement technique was graceful and unusually agile as she lingered around the white-robed man continuously, looking for an opportunity. Ethereal Peak had too many cultivation techniques and secret skills. Nian Qi had also cultivated many movement techniques and escape techniques, infusing them into her comprehension. She made use of the bloodline and physique of the God Race to cultivate a movement technique suitable for herself. The white-robed man swung his gigantic sword with both hands and possessed immense strength. However, he could not even touch the corner of Nian Qi's clothes. Nian Qi was still tense. That was because she knew that there was a high chance she would be killed by the white-robed man if she made a mistake. She could not withstand the white-robed man's power at all. However, the white-robed man was calm, and there was no hint of anxiousness in his eyes. Suddenly, perhaps due to fatigue from the long sword-wielding, a fleeting opening appeared in the white-robed man's chest. Without hesitation, Nian Qi strode forward with a bright gaze and threw a punch forward. Bang! Although the punch struck the white-robed man's chest, Nian Qi's expression changed starkly. Her fist did not seem to be striking flesh, but steel. Shing! The white robes on the man exploded, revealing a muscular, mighty figure with golden shimmering armor. The armor looked incomparably thick with obscure and complicated patterns that shone with a golden light. Nian Qi's punch struck the thick golden armor. The God Race man had revealed that opening intentionally. You were tricked. The God Race man smiled gently and punched out as well, punching Nian Qi in the chest. Poof! Instantly, Nian Qi was sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. Her face was pale, and she had a dispirited expression as her blood qi was dispersed. With a bang, Nian Qi smashed onto the ground heavily and felt like her bones and tendons were about to split. Instantly, a layer of cold sweat appeared on her face. You should know that I've already shown mercy. The God Race man walked slowly towards Nian Qi with a faint smile. If I had attacked with my sword instead of punching earlier on, you would have been a corpse. On account that you're talented and have half of the God Race's bloodline in your body, I can take you in as my slave. Are you willing? Nian Qi's gaze was cold, and she said nothing. She knew in her heart that the God Race man had indeed shown mercy earlier on. However, she would never agree to submit. When the God Race man saw that Nian Qi was unwilling to speak, he frowned slightly. You have to understand that I'm giving you a chance to survive. Thereafter, he looked at extreme fire on the other side and said indifferently, for example, the only thing awaiting him is death. Swoosh! Right then, extreme fire charged out of the encirclement of a few Kunlun mighty figures and threw the scarlet tripod in his hands towards the God Race man. Whoosh! The wind howled. The God Race man had a mocking expression and slashed down without even looking. Clang! Sparks flew. The scarlet tripod was slashed back by the sword of the God Race man and charged towards extreme fire at an even faster speed. At the same time, the Kunlun mighty figures seized the opportunity to attack. Extreme fire had no cloning techniques, and a few wounds appeared on his body instantly. In the end, he was even struck by his destiny dermic weapon before slamming heavily against the wall of the secret chamber behind him and sliding down slowly. Cracks appeared on the walls. It was clear how terrifying the power of that blow was. Ant, how dare you attack me? The God Race man sneered and was prepared to step forward to kill extreme fire completely. Right then, at the other end of the secret chamber, a loud roar sounded from the entrance of the tunnel, as though it contained torrential rage. The God Race man frowned slightly. There's someone else? In the blink of an eye, a figure appeared on the other end of the tunnel. The cultivator had green robes, black hair, and refined features. His gaze was like lightning as he surveyed his surroundings. In fact, the Kunlun mighty figures did not even dare to meet his gaze and avoided it instinctively. Master, are you all right? When the green-robed cultivator saw extreme fire who was slumped against the wall, he hurried forward and helped feed the latter a few elixirs. The God Race man sneered and could not help but stifle a chuckle. He thought that it was some powerful character. To think that it was that person's disciple. If he had already suppressed the master with such ease, there was nothing to fear about a single disciple. Chapter 1499. Suppressing a half-martial ancestor. Chapter 1499. Suppressing a half-martial ancestor. Zimo, you're back? Extreme Fire smiled. I'm fine. I'll be all right after a short rest. Be careful. This person is a half-martial ancestor of the God Race and isn't weak. Yes? Su Zimo nodded. Additionally, Extreme Fire continued. This should be a secret passage opened up by Fairy Ling Long. It can pass through the Kunlun barrier and connect to Tianhuang Mainland and Kunlun ruins. These people have just found out about the existence of this secret passage as well. Since they've already made a move, we can't let them leave alive. Although Extreme Fire and the others did not know the reason why Fairy Ling Long opened up this secret ground, they believed that there must be a reason for her actions. Furthermore, these people would definitely bring about even greater trouble if they escaped from this place. The only way to solve this problem once and for all was to kill all these Kunlun clansmen here. Fufu. At the side, the 9 Neonate had already snapped out of its stupor and its injuries were mostly recovered. When it heard that, it could not help but sneer. A mere late-stage conjoint body wishes to kill us all? After absorbing and refining that large chunk of Ashoka wood, Su Zimo's cultivation had already reached the late-stage conjoint body realm. He advanced 2 minor realms in succession. If he was cultivating normally, it would be impossible without at least a few thousand years. The power contained by the Ashoka wood was way too pure and massive, and it matched Su Zimo's Green Lotus True Body completely. The Green Lotus True Body could absorb the power of the Ashoka wood perfectly. God Race? Su Zimo looked at the God Race man not far away and frowned slightly. How could the God Race exist in the Kunlun ruins? At that moment, Nian Qi struggled to stand up as well and returned to Su Zimo's side, bowing slightly. Young master, you're the disciple of that ant? The God Race man looked at Su Zimo and smiled confidently. I only used a single slash to suppress your master. A single finger should suffice to suppress you. Is that so? Expressionlessly, Su Zimo walked towards the God Race man and said indifferently, You can try? As a God Race being and a half-martial ancestor, the God Race man did not take Su Zimo seriously at all. Indeed, as he said, he extended a finger and pushed down onto Su Zimo. Although it was only a finger, the finger surged with a golden blood chi that resembled a heavenly piercing pillar. It crushed down towards Su Zimo with a shocking aura. Su Zimo had a calm expression. There was no hint of panic in his eyes against the suppression of the finger. In fact, he did not even dodge. The finger was about to touch his head. Suddenly, Su Zimo attacked. In a flash, he gripped the finger of the God Race man. MMM? The power of the God Race man was blocked and could not continue its suppression. His heart skipped a beat, and he wanted to withdraw his finger. However, his finger was gripped tightly by Su Zimo and did not budge at all. It was impossible for him to pull out. Crack! Right then, a jarring sound echoed. The God Race man's eyes widened and his expression changed, revealing a pained expression. Finally, the God Race man could not help but let out a shrill scream. Su Zimo had snapped the God Race man's finger. The God Race man retreated wildly, but Su Zimo gripped his finger and would not let go. Shing! Flashes of blood appeared. The two opposing powers tore the finger apart. Ant, how dare you injure my divine body? The God Race man roared with a furious expression. It was merely a severed finger, and it regrew in the blink of an eye. However, all 10 fingers were connected to the heart, and the pain of losing a finger was unbearable. Furthermore, the God Race man had not expected anyone to be able to injure him. What sort of a broken divine body is this weak? Sneering coldly, Su Zimo did not stop and closed in, emitting an extremely terrifying pressure. Light slash. The God Race man gripped his sword with both hands and his blood chi surged, releasing the sound of tsunamis as he slashed towards Su Zimo. The power released by that slash was way too strong. The sword shone brightly in a bedazzling manner. This was the sword strike that destroyed Nian Qi's bloodline phenomenon and severely injured Extreme Fire. Against that torrential and ferocious slash, Su Zimo did not dodge or avoid. Instead, he reached out and grabbed the gigantic golden sword. You have a death wish. The God Race man's expression was cold. The green-robed man was courting death by trying to defend against his half-martial ancestor dermic weapon with his body. He was confident that he could slice the green-robed man into 2 with that slash. Bang! Before he could finish his thought, his gigantic golden sword had already struck Su Zimo's palm. Nothing as expected happened. Su Zimo was not cleaved into 2, and even his palm was intact. The absorption and refinement of the Ashoka wood did not only bring about an increase in cultivation realm, the Green Lotus True Body was also growing rapidly and became stronger. The Kunlun mighty figures and the 9 Neonate widened their eyes in disbelief, and their jaws almost dropped to the ground. Impossible! The God Race man exclaimed in shock. His sword was blocked by the green-robed man's body of flesh. Even with his divine body, he did not dare to defend against the edge of a half-martial ancestor's dermic weapon. How did this person grow his physical body? Humph! Su Zimo sneered. You want to kill me with your puny methods? Seizing the opportunity while the God Race man was slightly distracted, Su Zimo strode forward and flipped his palm, suppressing the God Race man's head. The palm transformed into a gigantic seal in midair with a majestic aura that was unstoppable. The God Race man was horrified and abandoned the gigantic sword in his hands right away. His body retreated rapidly while he reared his head furiously to avoid the gigantic seal. Boom! The God Race man's face avoided the gigantic seal in midair. However, the gigantic seal still smashed heavily against his chest. It smashed right into the ground, creating a gigantic pit. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the golden armor of the God Race man, and it shattered into pieces. The God Race man's face was pale. If not for the protection of the body armor, Su Zimo's palm strike earlier on would have shattered his body into pieces. Ta, ta, ta. To the God Race man, Su Zimo's footsteps sounded like the sound of death. He had never expected to encounter such a terrifying and powerful cultivator here. Right now, he only wanted to escape and inform his clansmen about what happened today. Nobody knew what variables such a powerful existence would create in the Kunlun ruins. Swoosh! The God Race man channeled his blood chi once more and leaped up from the pit. Before he could escape, his vision blurred and a figure had already arrived before him. Su Zimo did not waste time talking or give him any chance to catch his breath. With a backhand slap, he crushed down once more. Chapter 1500. Kill them all. Chapter 1500. Kill them all. The armor of the God Race man was shattered, and he was already in a wretched state after escaping from the pit. He no longer had his confidence and grace from earlier on. There was only panic and fear in his eyes. Swoosh! Although the God Race man did not seem like he made any moves, a gigantic golden shield suddenly appeared in his hands and stood erected before him. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The God Race man did not have a storage bag. He could clearly see that the gigantic golden shield was retrieved from a ring on the God Race man's finger. The purpose of the ring must be similar to the storage bag on his waist. Su Zimo did not think too much about it and continued to slap down. Boom! A loud bang sounded when Su Zimo's palm landed on the golden shield. Although the golden shield was intact, Su Zimo's palm strike suppressed both the shield and the God Race man. The God Race man's body slammed heavily onto the ground. This time round, without the protection of the golden armor, the God Race man's organs were severely shaken and he spat out a huge mouthful of blood. All right. Su Zimo nodded slightly. You're quite capable to take 2 of my palm strikes. Those words sounded extremely piercing to the God Race man. As a half-martial ancestor of the God Race, he had never endured such humiliation. The God Race man stood up slowly and wanted to pick up the gigantic golden shield beside him. However, he realized that the gigantic shield was already dim. The mysterious runes on it were completely destroyed by Su Zimo. That was because there was a clear palm print in the middle of the gigantic shield that covered all the runes beneath. Who are you? The God Race man's expression was grim as he grit his teeth. Are you some taboo race from Tianhuang Mainland? I'm not a taboo. I'm a human. Su Zimo said indifferently. Impossible. The God Race man shouted. Humans are the weakest race and are at the bottom of the food chain. How can you be a human? I'm Desolate, Marshal. Su Zimo continued. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The God Race man did not have much of a reaction when he heard the words Desolate, Marshal, and merely shook his head repeatedly. Narrowing his gaze, Su Zimo advanced once more and reached out to grab the God Race man's head. It was way too strange for traces of the god race to appear in the Kunlun ruins. Furthermore, if the god race being had not heard of his name, he was definitely not from Tianhuang Mainland. Su Zimo wanted to restrain the essence spirit of the god race being and search his soul. Sensing danger, the god race man suddenly shouted, "What are you guys waiting for? You can only leave alive if you attack together." It was only now that the 9 Neonate and the other Kunlun clansmen reacted. After all, Su Zimo had only attacked twice earlier on, and the god race man was already beaten up so badly without any chance to retaliate. "Desolate, Marshal!" The god race man roared, and his blood chi surged as he shouted, "It's impossible if you want to suppress me." Swoosh! A gigantic and majestic ancient structure appeared behind the god race man. It was golden in color and emanated a mysterious aura. That was the bloodline phenomenon of the god race. Beneath the pyramid, countless living beings were kneeling and praying with pious expressions. The god race man stood at the top of the pyramid and spread his arms, as though endless energy was gushing into his body. His injuries were healing rapidly, and his aura was rising continuously. At the same time, the 9 Neonate and the remaining 6 Kunlun mighty figures closed in and attacked one after another. The 9 Neonate and the others realized how strong Su Zimo was and did not dare to hold back. Dermic arts, secret skills, and dermic weapons filled the skies densely. Puny light of a firefly, Su Zimo's voice sounded with a supreme will. "How dare you try to compete against the bright moon?" After saying that, Su Zimo's figure vanished completely. In his place was a jade green lotus that soared into the skies. It was pristine as jade, and its petals blossomed slowly with a resplendent glow. "This is..." The 9 Neonate and the other Kunlun mighty figures revealed shocked expressions. The green lotus swayed gently. Visible ripples appeared across the entire void, as though a rock had fallen into a calm lake. Many dermic arts in midair dissipated. Some of the incoming Khanate mighty figure dermic weapons dimmed rapidly and fell from midair before they could even approach the green lotus. Snap! As for perfect mighty figure or even lesser dermic weapons, they shattered and were destroyed on the spot. The green lotus swayed once more. Another ripple spread. The 6 Kunlun mighty figures could not dodge at all. They seemed to be frozen in midair and enveloped by the ripple. Poof! 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 Everywhere the ripple passed, the bodies of the Kunlun mighty figures exploded into blood mists. The essence spirits of the 6 Kunlun mighty figures were devoured silently by the ripple produced by the creation green lotus and turned into nothingness. All 6 Kunlun mighty figures died without corpses remaining. The 9 Neonate realized that something was amiss and retreated first. Even so, 8 of its 9 heads were shattered and it nearly died here. The 9 Neonate retreated rapidly and fled into the distance. Right then, the creation green lotus swayed for the 3rd time. Boom! 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 The pyramid beneath the god race man collapsed instantly and countless gravel rolled down, burying the living beings that were kneeling and praying beneath. The god race man's eyes widened and cracks appeared on his body. This was a fight between bloodline phenomenons. His bloodline phenomenon was completely defeated. Su Zimo's figure reappeared and arrived beside the god race man in the blink of an eye. He slapped the latter on the head and captured the latter's essence spirit. Thereafter, in a flash, Su Zimo chased after the escaping 9 Neonate. "Young master, be careful. The 9 Neonate has 9 heads, and the ferocious beast can only die if 9 heads are minced at the same time," Nian Qi reminded hurriedly. "Oh." Su Zimo had a calm expression and replied casually without being surprised, "That's nothing much." Grabbing the essence spirit of the god race man with one hand, Su Zimo closed his sword fingers with the other and slashed gently in the direction of the 9 Neonate. After slashing out, Su Zimo had already turned around and walked back without even looking at the 9 Neonate. "Tsk, Tsk, Tsk." Sensing danger, the escaping 9 Neonate could not help but turn around. That single glance was filled with an incomparably resplendent sword beam. Everywhere was filled with white. It was unknown how many sword chi were coming at him from all directions. The 9 Neonate revealed a look of despair. There was nowhere to run. Even if he had 90 heads, he would die, let alone 9. Poof, poof, poof. The sound of sword chi tearing flesh could be heard as a blood mist spread. In the blink of an eye, the 9 Neonate vanished, and there was only a pile of flesh and mud left on the spot after it was minced by the heaven-slaying sword chi. Chapter 1501. Ling Long's Title. Chapter 1501. Ling Long's Title. If you dare kill me, all of you will have to die. The essence spirit of the god race being was trapped in Su Zimo's palm and howled. Su Zimo's expression was cold and unmoved. Beams of fiend chi extended from the ball of light in his palm and coiled around the god race man's essence spirit rapidly, searching the latter's soul. The god race man had a pained expression as his essence spirit curled and trembled continuously. Scenes surged into Su Zimo's mind. Su Zimo frowned. Due to the disruption of a mysterious power, the various scenes were blurry. However, all the environments in the man's memories were foreign to Su Zimo. There were obscure words, strange buildings, and a weird language. Everything was foreign and did not fit in with Su Zimo's past knowledge. Of course, Tianhuang Mainland was vast and filled with countless mysteries. There were also many regions that Su Zimo had not stepped foot into before. It was not surprising for these scenes to exist in some regions. Poof! Before long, the essence spirit of the god race man exploded. The soul-searching art failed. The entire process was extremely short, and Su Zimo did not obtain any useful information. Nian Qi and Extreme Fire walked over as well. Both of them were conjoint body mighty figures. Although they were severely injured earlier on, they were already able to move after resting for a while. How was it? Did you manage to gain anything? Extreme Fire asked. Su Zimo shook his head and said deeply, the background of this god race being is a little strange. I can't say for now, but he shouldn't be from Tianhuang Mainland. Young Master, Senior Extreme Fire, hurry and come over. Right then, Nian Qi walked to the edge of the wall, not far away, and suddenly shouted. Su Zimo and Extreme Fire walked over and looked up. There were many words left on the wall, but they were covered by spider webs and dust and could not be seen clearly. Su Zimo waved his sleeves gently and dermic powers surged, brushing away the dust and revealing elegant words. The rows of words were neat and tidy. There were only 4 words on the first row. I am Ling Long. Those words were left behind by Fairy Ling Long. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he continued reading hurriedly. After a long time, the 3 of them read the messages on the wall and exchanged glances, looking emotional. Fairy Ling Long truly has good intentions. Nian Qi sighed. Extreme Fire nodded as well. I'm afraid only such a woman is worthy of the eternal human emperor. It's no wonder why Fairy Ling Long's name can spread through history even without the title of an emperor. Through Fairy Ling Long's message, Su Zimo and the other 2 finally understood the origin of this secret ground. It turned out that back when the ancient war broke out, the human race was steadily defeated. At that time, the human emperor was not at his peak and was not at the point where he could suppress the emperors of the primordial races. Against the attacks of the primordial races, human experts suffered immense losses. As for Fairy Ling Long, in order to help the ancient emperors recover, she searched for a primordial divine medicine, and that brought her to the Kunlun ruins. The Kunlun barrier existed in the Kunlun ruins. With her powerful perception, Fairy Ling Long noticed a flaw in the barrier and used it to open up a passage between the Kunlun ruins and Tianhuang Mainland. That was the embryonic form of this secret ground. However, the reason why Fairy Ling Long opened up the secret ground was not merely to enter the Kunlun ruins. Her true goal was to leave a way out for the human race. If the human race was defeated in the ancient war, the Kunlun ruins would be their final escape route. That was because this was a forbidden ground for the primordial races. As long as they retreated here, they could at least preserve the bloodline of the human race and pass down their civilization without being destroyed by the primordial races. As for this secret ground, the large number of dermic weapons, cultivation techniques, secret skills, and universal treasures were prepared for the humans that retreated to the Kunlun ruins. If the human race had truly reached that point, they would have suffered immense losses with almost no survivors and countless lineages severed. As for those dermic weapons, cultivation techniques, secret skills, and universal treasures, they could protect the human race and pass down their civilization. They could accumulate strength and wait for an opportunity to rise once more. Fairy Ling Long did not choose to carry those treasures with her. That was because she knew that she would definitely not retreat in the ancient war. She would fight with the human emperor and the ancient emperors to the end. Even to her last drop of blood, she would protect the dignity of the human race and die without regrets. When Fairy Ling Long left this place, she was already prepared to die. The words here were equivalent to Fairy Ling Long's final words. At that point, Su Zimo and the other two were moved and felt a sense of admiration in their hearts. The three of them bowed deeply towards the wall in unison. That bow was them paying respect to the ancient emperors. That bow was for the eternal human emperor. That bow was for Fairy Ling Long. More than that, that bow was for the countless seniors who perished in the ancient war. They might be unknown or have no surnames or records. However, it was their fervor, corpses, and unyielding spirit that created the glory of the human race through history. Su Zimo and the other two stood up and smiled at one another. At the very least, the worst-case scenario did not happen in the ancient war. The human emperor rose and was invincible, suppressing the primordial races and eventually leading the human race to win the ancient war. Fairy Ling Long did not manage to make use of this measure either. That was the reason why this place was sealed until now. Behind the words on the wall were a few lines of words left behind by Fairy Ling Long. I stayed in the Kunlun ruins for a few days and discovered some clues to the primordial war. However, time was pressing and it was difficult for me to divert my attention to check things out. There seems to be something else about the primordial war that doesn't match the rumors. Although there were not many words, they revealed important information. If she did not discover anything, Fairy Ling Long would definitely not spout nonsense and even left behind words to remind her descendants. Su Zimo and the other two frowned slightly in deep thought. The primordial war was too far from now. Nobody knew about what happened in the past, and the truth of the primordial war was only known in the Kunlun ruins. At the end of the words, Night Spirit was even mentioned. Night Spirit was a taboo and naturally could not hide from Fairy Ling Long. Initially, Fairy Ling Long's plan was to bring Night Spirit back to Tianhuang Mainland and raise it to fight against the primordial races with it. The reason why there were Kunlun clansmen that died in this secret ground was because Fairy Ling Long took away Night Spirit. They were killed by her here after hunting her to this place. However, at the last minute before Fairy Ling Long left, she changed her mind. Firstly, Night Spirit would definitely require a long time to grow. At that time, the ancient war had already reached its most intense state, and there was no time to wait for Night Spirit to grow. Secondly, Fairy Ling Long was worried as well. If she brought Night Spirit back to Tianhuang Mainland, it would bring about unimaginable trouble for Tianhuang Mainland, and she would be a sinner. Fairy Ling Long did not wish to return Night Spirit to the Kunlun ruins either. After considering for a long time, she threw Night Spirit here and allowed it to survive on its own. Many years later, Night Spirit left this place with the help of extreme fire and was born and grew in this generation. Chapter 1502, Storage Ring. Chapter 1502, Storage Ring. What's the secret behind the primordial war? Extreme Fire looked at the wall and suddenly asked. Su Zimo smiled gently. Stop guessing. We can only uncover all the secrets after entering the Kunlun ruins. Let's go. Extreme Fire nodded and was about to move. Su Zimo burst into laughter. Master, you and Yin Qi have yet to recover. It's better for you to rest here for a few days first. There's no hurry. That's true. Extreme Fire smiled. I wonder what sort of situation and danger we'll face upon entering the Kunlun ruins. We should make some preparations. Thereafter, Extreme Fire and Yin Qi recuperated in this secret chamber. Both of them were at the conjoint body realm and had powerful bloodlines. Furthermore, Yin Qi possessed the bloodline of the god race, and her regeneration capabilities were shocking. In less than 3 days, she had already recovered. On the 5th day, Extreme Fire recovered as well. "Let's go," Extreme Fire shouted. Su Zimo nodded and handed Yin Qi a golden ring. "I took this off the finger of that god race man. There's no reaction when I made contact with it using my dermic powers. Give it a try." Yin Qi received the ring and looked at it curiously before injecting dermic powers. There was still no reaction from the ring. Pondering for a moment, Yin Qi suddenly bit her fingertip and squeezed out a drop of blood, dropping it on the ring. The drop of blood fused rapidly into the ring. Thereafter, Yin Qi was stunned and her eyes were filled with shock. "What's wrong?" Su Zimo asked. Yin Qi composed herself and said in a deep voice, "There's a huge space within this ring and many things can be stored within. It's not inferior to our storage bags." Su Zimo nodded. "My guess is right. This should be a storage ring. However, only the god race can use it." "Young master, there are some books and weapons here." Yin Qi willed the books and weapons out. Extreme Fire casually took a book and skimmed through it. "What's written? I've never seen this before." Extreme Fire frowned slightly. The words in the books were extremely foreign. They were not words of the demon race or humans and were curved and indistinguishable, like heavenly books. The forging of those weapons was completely different from Tianhuang Mainland as well. Su Zimo shook his head too. "I can't understand. Let's keep these items first." Yin Qi obeyed and placed the books and weapons back into her storage ring. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo said, "Yin Qi, put away this storage ring as well. Don't expose it." They were about to enter the Kunlun ruins, and nobody knew who they would face or what situation they would be in. If there were other god race beings in the Kunlun ruins and saw the storage ring, they would definitely be able to guess that the god race man died in their hands. Su Zimo gazed at the corpses of the Kunlun mighty figures thoughtfully. "What's wrong, Zimo?" Extreme Fire asked. Su Zimo said, "Have you guys noticed that the Kunlun clansmen that entered this time round are different from the Kunlun clansmen of the ancient era?" "Different?" Extreme Fire frowned slightly. Yin Qi was puzzled as well. The Kunlun clansmen that died in the ancient era had long rotted with only corpses remaining. It could not be seen what was different about them. Su Zimo pointed to the waists of the Kunlun corpses that entered this time round. "Look, these Kunlun clansmen have gray ribbons tied around their waists." The Kunlun clansmen of the ancient era had purple gold ribbons around their waists. "Indeed, but what does that prove?" Extreme Fire asked with a frown. "I don't know either." Su Zimo shook his head. "Let's go and check out the Kunlun ruins." The three of them headed towards the other end of the secret ground. Before long, they arrived at the end of the secret ground. However, there was no path at the end, only a cold wall. Su Zimo conjured hand seals repeatedly with both hands and shot out dermic powers into every corner, shouting softly, "Disperse." The wall before him gradually disappeared and a passage to the outside world appeared. At the entrance connecting the secret ground to the Kunlun ruins, there was a formation set up by Fairy Ling. After a long time, a few formation eyes were shattered, and the god race man discovered the flaws such that he was able to dispel it. In the past few days, Su Zimo had repaired the formation once more. The foundation of the formation was still present, and there was no need to draw any formation patterns. Su Zimo merely had to repair the formation eyes, and it could be activated again. That way, this secret ground would no longer be discovered by anyone. Su Zimo left the secret ground with Extreme Fire and Yin Qi and entered the Kunlun ruins. The moment the three of them entered the Kunlun ruins, they were shocked. An ancient aura surged over, as though the three of them had traveled back in time to the primordial era in an instant. Due to the existence of the Kunlun barrier, this place was truly isolated from the outside world. Throughout history, only fairy Ling had come to the Kunlun ruins and left alive. These were the most primitive things and traces of the primordial era. All the structures here were far from the current structures. Of course, most of them were already reduced to ruins. Suzimo and the other two headed in a direction and surveyed their surroundings slowly. Everywhere was filled with ruins and corpses. All the structures were built on the ruins. Even the vegetation was rooted in the ruins. Before long, their expressions changed and they caught sight of another malevolent spirit fruit not far away. Nianqi surveyed her surroundings and did not find any danger. She then hurried forward and plucked the malevolent spirit fruit, handing it to Suzimo. Back then, the first malevolent spirit fruit found at the outer perimeter of the Kunlun ruins was given to Extreme Fire. Naturally, this one was given to Suzimo. Take it. Suzimo smiled gently. Nianqi shook her head stubbornly, still insistent. Suzimo could only put away the malevolent spirit fruit. The three of them did not walk far when they caught sight of another malevolent spirit fruit. The three of them wandered around the outer perimeter of the Kunlun ruins for a long time and fought against countless vengeful spirits and malevolent ghosts, but they only obtained a single malevolent spirit fruit. However, they had not gone far in the Kunlun ruins before two were already seen. With that, all three of them had the fruits individually. With the existence of the malevolent spirit fruit, their chances of passing the Fire Divine Power tribulation when breaking through to the Mahayana realm would increase by 30%. The malevolent spirit fruit was long extinct in Tianhuang Mainland. To think that the three of them would obtain three in the Kunlun ruins. The storyteller was right. Although the Kunlun ruins was an unknown place and possessed immense dangers, there were also incredible opportunities. There were countless treasures here, and the malevolent spirit fruit was only one of them. Suzimo's heart was filled with anticipation as well. Perhaps the green lotus true body could grow rapidly here. The main reason why malevolent spirit fruits were so common in the Kunlun ruins was not only because of the unique environment here, but also because the people in the Kunlun ruins did not need them at all. That was because they could not advance to the Mahayana realm. Although the malevolent spirit fruit was a treasure, it was useless for them. Chapter 1503, Kunlun Lord. Chapter 1503, Kunlun Lord. The three of them continued forward. After walking for about an hour, they did not see any signs of the Kunlun race. Strange, where's the Kunlun race? Extreme Fire was puzzled. There's another malevolent spirit fruit there. Nianqi looked around and caught sight of a malevolent spirit fruit not far away. After a brief pause, she continued, however, all three of us have it. There's no point in us eating more of this universal treasure. No worries, Suzimo said. Take it down. You can bring it over to some old friends of Tianhuang Mainland when you leave this place. That's right. Extreme Fire nodded as well. Nobody fought for the malevolent spirit fruit in the Kunlun ruins. However, the various major sects, factions, and half-martial ancestors of Tianhuang Mainland would definitely fight to the death for it. Nianqi strode over. Before long, Suzimo's expression changed and he suddenly said, Nianqi, come back. Nianqi paused and could tell that Suzimo was warning her. True enough, not far away, dozens of figures sped over. The two leaders had powerful auras and were at the conjoint body realm with Dharma-characteristic Dao-lords behind them. All of them charged towards Suzimo and the other two with an aggressive aura. In the blink of an eye, they arrived and surrounded the three of them with hostile expressions. If he was not wrong, this should be the Kunlun race. Suzimo swept his gaze across. The Kunlun race beings were all wearing gray ribbons on their waists. They should be the same as the Kunlun race beings who had entered the secret ground a few days ago. Intruders! A conjoint body mighty figure on the left suddenly shouted with a cold expression and a vicious gaze. We are indeed from Tianhuang Mainland. Suzimo nodded and did not lie. Be it their attires or their auras, the three of them were way too different from the Kunlun race that had lived here for countless years and could not hide at all. Intruders, Anyone who trespasses into the Kunlun ruins shall be killed without mercy. The conjoint body mighty figure on the right waved his hand and ordered. The surrounding Dharma characteristic Tao lords conjured Dharmic arts and summoned Dharmic weapons, wanting to attack. Humph! Su Zimo harumphed coldly and flicked his finger. Chi! Chi! Two blinding sword chi burst forth from his fingertip. It was a vast expanse of white and killing intent surged into the skies as it slashed towards the two conjoint body mighty figures. The expressions of the two conjoint body mighty figures changed starkly. The sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi made both of them shudder. The two conjoint body mighty figures dodged frantically and retreated, but they could not avoid the two heaven-slaying sword chi still. Flashes of blood spewed out. Two arms were tossed high into the air, sliced off by the heaven-slaying sword chi. The most terrifying thing was that the sharpness and destructive power contained by the heaven-slaying sword chi made it impossible for the two conjoint body mighty figures to regrow their limbs. Blood gushed endlessly from the wound. Why you? Just you wait. The two conjoint body mighty figures had panicked expressions and fled into the distance after throwing that casual remark, disappearing in the blink of an eye. I'm Desolate, Marshal. Suddenly, Su Zimo spoke. Don't forget to mention my name when you head back. The Dharmic arts of the other Dharma characteristic Tao Lords had just been conjured and had yet to be released. However, they were all dumbfounded when they saw that. Before the two conjoint body mighty figures could attack, they retreated due to the killing intent of the two sword chi. How could they dare to move? A Dharma characteristic Tao Lord had just attacked with his Dharmic weapon. Just as it was about to hit Su Zimo, the Dharma characteristic Tao Lord changed directions hurriedly and avoided Su Zimo, summoning his Dharmic weapon back. Su Zimo glanced over. The Dharma characteristic Tao Lords were scared out of their wits and disappeared before Su Zimo and the other two before long. Su Zimo did not move, nor did he chase after them. Zimo, why did you hold back intentionally and let them leave? Extreme Fire asked. These people will definitely attract even stronger existences when they return. If Su Zimo had attacked with his full strength, how could the two heaven-slaying sword chi have only severed two arms? No worries. Su Zimo waved it off. Divine powers are forbidden in the Kunlun ruins, so even the strongest experts are only half-martial ancestors. Half-martial ancestors won't be a threat to us. Although Su Zimo's tone was calm, it was filled with immense confidence. Up till this point of his cultivation, there were very few people in the same cultivation realm who could truly match him. Although the Kunlun ruins had a unique environment with countless treasures, cultivation techniques, and secret skills that could nurture many paragons and monster incarnates, Su Zimo was confident that he could suppress all paragons. Su Zimo continued, furthermore, it's inevitable that we'll come into contact with the Kunlun race in the Kunlun ruins. This can be considered a chance. Actually, he had another thought. Night Spirit. Ever since the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley, Night Spirit's whereabouts were unknown and his fate was unknown. If Night Spirit was still alive, there was a high chance he could be in the Kunlun ruins. The reason why Su Zimo reported his Dao title earlier on was to spread the news with the help of the two conjoint body mighty figures. If Night Spirit was in the Kunlun race, he would definitely know that he was here. The three of them continued forward. Before long, figures appeared not far away. This time round, there were only a dozen or so figures, but their auras were much stronger. The leader was a half-martial ancestor expert with gray hair. Although he was skinny, his demonic chi surged. The dozens of figures behind him were all conjoint body mighty figures. The two conjoint body mighty figures who had their arms severed by Su Zimo initially were in the middle as well. The two mighty figures' arms had already recovered to normal. It was clear that an expert had helped to erase the sword chi from the wounds on the two of them, allowing their Dharmic powers to surge and regrow their limbs. Who is Desolate, Marshal? The gray-haired man in the lead approached and asked slowly. Commander, that's him. One of the conjoint body mighty figures who escaped stood out hurriedly and pointed at Su Zimo. You're Desolate, Marshal? The gray-haired man narrowed his eyes and shone with a cold glint in deep thought. A moment later, he suddenly said, "Follow me. Master wants to see you." "Who is your master?" Su Zimo asked. "Our master is naturally the master of the Kunlun ruins, the Kunlun Lord." The gray-haired man said proudly, "Follow me. You'll know after you meet my master." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he nodded to Extreme Fire and Yin Qi. The gray-haired man led the way. Su Zimo and the other two followed closely behind. Along the way, Su Zimo actually felt nervous and hopeful. Given Night Spirit's capabilities, there was definitely a chance for him to become the Kunlun Lord. Could it be Night Spirit? Everyone advanced at an extremely fast speed. After walking for about 2 hours, they did not encounter many Kunlun clansmen. Su Zimo frowned and asked, "The Kunlun race should be massive. Why are there so few of you?" "That's because most of our clansmen have gone to exterminate the traitors," the gray-haired man said indifferently. After a brief pause, he continued, "Be careful of your words after meeting my master. Say whatever you think. Otherwise, all 3 of you will die if my master is enraged." Chapter 1504. Kneel. 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 Chapter 1504. Kneel. 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 Under the lead of the gray-haired man, Su Zimo and the other two advanced. The Kunlun mighty figures that followed him looked at the 3 of them with clear hostility. They surrounded the 3 of them as though they were afraid that they would escape. A long time later, a massive palace appeared before them. It spanned hundreds of kilometers and was grand and extravagant. Every single tile and brick was made from the best materials. The design of the palace was antiquated as well. A patrolling team of Kunlun clansmen passed by everyone. When they saw the gray-haired man, they knelt on the ground respectfully and greeted, "Greetings, Commander." "Yes?" The gray-haired man nodded with a calm and dignified expression. Waving his hand, he said, "Rise." Upon hearing that, the patrolling Kunlun clansmen stood up and left. The gray-haired man turned around and glared at Su Zimo and the other two before saying coldly, "Remember, you have to kneel and greet the Kunlun Lord." When he heard that, Extreme Fire revealed a disdainful expression. Who was he? He was the top weapon refinement grandmaster of Tianhuang Mainland, and countless conjoint body mighty figures sought his help in weapon refinement. Furthermore, he was a mighty figure that ruled over a region and had torrential combat strength. How could he kneel to anyone casually? "What Kunlun Lord? You sure are cocky." Extreme Fire sneered internally but did not say anything. Yin Qi was expressionless. She only listened to Su Zimo. If he wanted her to kneel, she would. Su Zimo's expression was calm, and no one could read his emotions. The gray-haired man raised his brow slightly and sneered, "Don't blame me for reminding you guys, but this is the Kunlun ruins. There are rules to the Kunlun ruins. I don't care how strong you guys are in Tianhuang Mainland. In the Kunlun ruins, even if you're a dragon, you'll have to sprawl obediently. Anyone who doesn't obey the rules of the Kunlun ruins shall be killed without mercy." Su Zimo was still silent and had no reaction to the gray-haired man's threat. He was neither afraid nor furious. His thoughts were simple. If the Kunlun Lord was Night Spirit, everything would be fine. Naturally, Night Spirit would not make him kneel either. However, if the Kunlun Lord was not Night Spirit, there was no one in this world who could force him to kneel. Even Mahayana patriarchs could not do it. The gray-haired man led Su Zimo and the others forward. After passing through many palaces, a gigantic sacrificial platform appeared before them and stood tall. Countless living beings of different races stood around the sacrificial platform. However, every single living being had a gray ribbon tied around their waists. Their cultivation realms were different, and they were densely packed. There were at least 10 million of them. Among them, there were many conjoint body mighty figures and half-martial ancestor experts. All of those living beings were from the Kunlun race. The army of so many powerful living beings was well-disciplined, orderly, and murderous. It looked extremely shocking. Even in Tianhuang Mainland, there had never been such a scene. Cultivators of a super sect, including Qi refinement warriors, amounted to 1 million at most. There were so many Kunlun clansmen that could roughly be divided into 5 massive teams. They occupied different regions and surrounded the sacrificial platform. Among them, a half-martial ancestor with a terrifying aura stood at the front of 4 teams and looked to be of noble status. In order to get rid of the rebellion in the Kunlun ruins this time round, Master gathered 10 armies. 5 of them are here, and the other 5 are fighting against the traitors at the front. The 4 half-martial ancestors you see are the commanders of 4 armies. Su Zimo swept his gaze. The position of the 5th army commander was empty. If he was not wrong, the gray-haired man beside him should be the commander of the 5th army. With so many powerful living beings gathered together, an incomparably powerful aura reverberated around the palace. If millions of Kunlun clansmen were to attack at the same time, they could probably crush any conjoint body mighty figure or half-martial ancestor expert into pieces. Even Extreme Fire and Yin Qi were secretly shocked, and their expressions changed slightly when they saw such a majestic scene. Among the 3 of them, Su Zimo was the only one who remained calm the entire time. Of course, the most striking thing was not the Kunlun army. It was the few people on the sacrificial platform in the middle. In the middle of the sacrificial platform was a throne made of gigantic bones. Every single bone was a dragon bone, and even after countless years, they still emitted a powerful dragon chi. This was a true dragon throne. Someone sat on the throne. It was a bald, burly man with a mighty figure and a mighty aura. Just by sitting there casually, he was like the master who controlled the world. An army of 10 million would obey the orders of a single person. This is the Kunlun Lord, the gray-haired man said proudly. A look of disappointment flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Initially, he thought that the Kunlun Lord might be Night Spirit. To think that it was a stranger. Although there were many living beings around the platform, he could not spot Night Spirit. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and looked towards the Kunlun Lord. The Kunlun Lord exuded an extremely evil aura, like a gigantic abyss that could devour everything. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Although the Kunlun Lord was not human, he could not tell what his true form was. Behind the Kunlun Lord stood 3 handsome men in white robes. Although they were disguised, Su Zimo recognized them instantly. The God Race. The 3 of them were dressed exactly the same as the God Race being who died in his hands in the Ling Long secret ground. Su Zimo remained silent. At that moment, the gray-haired man had already descended on the sacrificial platform with Su Zimo and the other 2. Huxian, you are back? The Kunlun Lord smiled and said. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. The mouth of the Kunlun Lord nearly reached his ears when he smiled. It was so huge that it gave off a creepy feeling. Greetings, Master. The gray-haired man called Huxian knelt on the ground hurriedly and bowed respectfully. Su Zimo and the other 2 did not move. The Kunlun Lord swept his gaze and the smile on his face vanished. Intruders, why aren't you kneeling at the sight of the Kunlun Lord? Huxian asked with a ferocious gaze. Kneel, kneel, kneel. The millions of living beings beneath let out a series of furious roars as demonic chi surged into the air with a mighty aura that shook the world. Even with Extreme Fire's powerful mental fortitude, he felt immense pressure at this moment. I don't have that habit. Su Zimo replied nonchalantly. Killing intent flashed in the eyes of Huxian as he looked towards the Kunlun Lord who was sitting on the dragon throne instinctively. The Kunlun Lord was expressionless and closed his eyes slowly. Huxian understood and revealed a menacing expression as he leaped up from the ground. His blood chi surged, and he lunged towards Su Zimo. Since you refuse to kneel, die. Huxian's long hair was filled with blood that suddenly squirmed, turning into small gray snakes. They bared their foul and toxic fangs and spat their forked tongues, biting towards Su Zimo. Chapter 1505, New Commander. Chapter 1505. New Commander. Su Zimo's expression turned cold. If the Kunlun Lord was not Night Spirit, it meant that this Commander Hux before them had nothing to do with Night Spirit. Su Zimo would have no reservations killing this man. You want to kill me? Su Zimo reached out and grabbed Hux head. Every single hair on Hux head was a gray snake. They were dense and shocking. There was no way of attacking. You overestimate yourself. When he saw that Su Zimo dared to grab with his bare hands, Hux could not help but sneer. However, his expression changed instantly. Just as Su Zimo's palm was about to descend on his head, an extremely sharp sword chi burst forth from his palm. Tsk, tsk. Beams of sword chi burst forth and severed the gray snakes on his head instantly, spewing blood. Hux expression changed starkly as he burst in retreat and escaped from the mincing sword chi. His blood chi surged and he reverted to his true form in the blink of an eye. It was a pure-blooded ferocious beast, the Hux snake. However, the moment his massive body was conjured, Su Zimo had already closed in and pushed down his head violently. Bang! Before Hux could react, Su Zimo had already pushed his head down onto the sacrificial platform. It was unknown what materials were used to build the sacrificial platform, but it was indestructible. When the Hux snake's head was smashed onto the surface, the sacrificial platform was intact. However, the Hux snake's face was smashed beyond recognition and its skull was shattered. The Kunlun Lord opened his eyes with a hint of surprise. One had to understand that only the strongest half-martial ancestors were qualified to be the commanders of the 10 armies under his lead. Among the 10 commanders, although Hux was not the strongest, he was ranked top 5. Furthermore, this green-robed cultivator was only at the conjoint body realm. However, Hux was a half-martial ancestor. The moment both parties exchanged blows, it was a crushing defeat for Hux. An uproar broke out beneath the sacrificial platform as well. In the hearts of the Kunlun race, the statuses of the commanders were second only to the Kunlun Lord. Every single one of them was invincible and not to be challenged. However, they had not expected their commander to be suppressed by an outsider. It was not over yet. Hux wanted to struggle and stand up, but Su Zimo did not give him the chance. He strode forward and stomped down on Hux head. The entire platform shook. Under countless gazes, one of the 10 great commanders of the Kunlun race, Hux, had his head crushed by Su Zimo's foot and his essence spirit was destroyed, dying on the spot. Instantly, the entire place fell silent. Nobody expected this outcome. As a half-martial ancestor expert, he was stomped to death by Su Zimo before he could even unleash half of his combat strength. Hux had not expected that Su Zimo would dare attack. Less than that, he had not expected Su Zimo to dare kill him right in the Kunlun ruins and in front of the Kunlun Lord in front of everyone. Intruder, you have a death wish. Roar. Howl. The 4 commanders below reacted and reverted to their true forms one after another. With a series of roars, they descended on the sacrificial platform and encircled Su Zimo. Kill him. Kill him. The many Kunlun clansmen below gradually snapped out of their stupor as well. Their eyes were filled with blood as they roared. Piak, piak, piak. Right then, someone clapped gently. The clamor above and below the sacrificial platform disappeared before long. The 4 commanders shuddered as well and retreated slowly with a hint of fear in their eyes. There was only a single person in the Kunlun ruins with such prestige. On the dragon throne, the Kunlun Lord clapped and nodded slightly. Ruthless, savage, and strong. I like it. After a brief pause, he suddenly asked, "You're Desolate Marshal?" "That's right," Su Zimo replied. "How did you guys enter from Tianhuang Mainland?" The Kunlun Lord asked again. "With the Kunlun barrier, under normal circumstances, you guys won't be able to enter. Initially, we were indeed blocked outside. Later on, for some unknown reason, a node appeared on this barrier, and we seized that opportunity to enter the Kunlun ruins through it." Su Zimo was long prepared and would naturally not reveal anything about the Ling Long secret ground. Oh. The Kunlun Lord was still expressionless as he asked, "Where is that node?" Su Zimo pointed in a random direction. "It's useless even if we search for it now. The node has already vanished." "You're lying." Suddenly, the gaze of the Kunlun Lord intensified with a sinister glint. The moment the Kunlun Lord said that, he had already vanished from the dragon throne. It was too fast. Before Extreme Fire and Yin Qi could react, an evil and terrifying aura had already descended before them. "Watch out!" Su Zimo hollered and swept his arm casually, pushing Extreme Fire and Yin Qi to the side. His blood qi burst forth, and the sound of a tsunami burst forth from his body. Bang! 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 By the time Extreme Fire and Yin Qi balanced themselves, the Kunlun Lord and Su Zimo were already fighting. The two figures intertwined on the sacrificial platform and fought with speed. In just a few breaths, both parties had punched at least 100 times. The bloodline of the Kunlun Lord was also channeled to the Tsunami Blood Realm. This Kunlun Lord is very strong. Extreme Fire was secretly alarmed. Although Su Zimo did not release his full strength, there were very few experts who could match him to this extent in melee combat. At the very least, he and Yin Qi were definitely not a match for the Kunlun Lord. Suddenly, the two of them clashed once more and separated instantly. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, the Kunlun Lord reared his head in laughter, and his mouth opened so wide that it almost reached the back of his head. He bared his menacing fangs in a terrifying manner. Great, great. There was no sign of anger on the face of the Kunlun Lord as he laughed. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he looked at the Kunlun Lord quietly. "Desolate Marshal, why have you come to the Kunlun ruins?" the Kunlun Lord asked. Su Zimo said, "I heard that there are many treasures here. We want to cultivate in the Kunlun ruins for a period of time and borrow the treasures here to raise our cultivation." "All right," the Kunlun Lord said, "all the treasures in the Kunlun ruins are under my control. As long as you need them, I can provide them all to you." "Oh." Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he asked, "On what condition?" The Kunlun Lord said slowly, "Now that Huxian is dead, you're the new commander of that army. I want you to follow me and kill the traitors of the Kunlun ruins." A commotion broke out beneath the sacrificial platform. Nobody expected that instead of taking revenge for Huxian after his death, the Kunlun Lord even promoted the intruder who killed him to be the commander of an army. "I don't care about background or origin, I only care about your ability," the Kunlun Lord said. "The position of the commander belongs to the capable. Even if you're an intruder, I'll hold you in high regards." "Master, what about the feud of Commander Huxian?" A Kunlun mighty figure could not help but stand out. "Are you dissatisfied with my decision?" The Kunlun Lord glanced sideways. The Kunlun mighty figure shuddered with a fearful expression and did not dare to continue. "Die then." Suddenly, the Kunlun Lord opened his mouth and a tremendous suction force burst forth. The Kunlun mighty figure could not defend against it at all and was devoured by the Kunlun Lord. Chapter 1506, Leader of the Traitors. Chapter 1506, Leader of the Traitors. Everyone was silent. The clamor from before quietened down instantly. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of bones being crushed sounded from the Kunlun Lord's mouth in a shuddering manner. Scarlet blood seeped out slowly from the gaps between the Kunlun Lord's teeth. The Kunlun Lord licked his lips and swallowed the blood. All the Kunlun race beings looked at the Kunlun Lord with fear in their eyes. Su Zimo remained silent. He was not interested in the position of commander or the extermination of the traitors. However, on second thought, there was no harm in that. Furthermore, he could use this opportunity to understand more about the Kunlun ruins and might even be able to discover the truth of the primordial war. "Desolate Marshal, what do you think?" the Kunlun Lord asked slowly. "No problem." Su Zimo nodded and shifted his gaze to the few white-robed god race beings not far away, asking in a seemingly casual manner, These are guests of the Kunlun ruins and are also helpers I found." The Kunlun Lord was extremely cautious as well, and did not reveal the fact that the few of them were from the god race. Seems like the traitors in the Kunlun ruins are rather troublesome to deal with. Even you can't suppress them and have to look for help? Su Zimo raised his brow. The Kunlun Lord sneered, "They're just small fries. It's just that the traitor leader is a little difficult to deal with. You'll know when you see him later on." After a brief pause, he said with a fake smile, "Desolate Marshal, it's not that I look down on you. If it was a one-on-one fight, you might not be a match for that traitor leader." "Oh, I'm looking forward to it then," Su Zimo said indifferently. It was clear that the Kunlun Lord was agitating him intentionally. Although Su Zimo said that he was looking forward to it, he was unmoved. "When should we move?" Su Zimo asked. "Tomorrow morning, I'll personally lead the army to conquer the rebellion." The Kunlun Lord said, "You can rest for the day today. Men, bring Commander Desolate Marshal to the palace to rest. Bring the most beautiful demoness in my palace over and reward her to Commander Desolate Marshal." The Kunlun Lord waved his hand. "There's no need." Su Zimo waved it off. The three of them followed a Kunlun clansman down the platform towards a palace. Before long, they disappeared from everyone's sights. This Desolate Marshal is sharp and decisive in killing. He's not easy to control. Do you really intend to take him under your wing? A white-robed god race being walked to the side of the Kunlun Lord and suddenly asked. The Kunlun Lord smiled gently. "This person's combat strength isn't weak. It's a pity to kill him. Why don't we use him to deal with that beast? Once this battle is over, he'll naturally die." The Kunlun Lord licked his lips with a greedy expression. "I can smell an extremely powerful and fresh blood chi from him. This person's flesh must be a great tonic." "Be careful, don't hurt your teeth." Another god race being laughed. "Fufu." The Kunlun Lord grinned. "Don't worry, I didn't use my full strength when I fought him earlier on. Furthermore, you guys are here too, aren't it? These three intruders won't be able to cause much trouble." Suddenly, a god race being said, "I'm worried about something." "Oh." The Kunlun Lord looked over. The god race being said deeply, "That beast returned from Tianhuang Mainland, and the three of them are from Tianhuang Mainland as well. What if they know one another?" "One." The Kunlun Lord burst into laughter. "How can there be such a coincidence in the world? So what if they know each other? That beast can't hold on for much longer. Desolate Marshal isn't a fool. If he knows how to judge the situation, he knows who he should help." Pausing for a moment, he retracted the smile on his face and said coldly, "However, if he truly has any ill intentions, I'll devour him alive right away." In a palace in the Kunlun ruins, Su Zimo sat in a lotus position on a bed and rubbed his glabella gently with his fingers, deep in thought. Extreme Fire and Yin Qi searched everywhere in the palace and only returned to Su Zimo's side after ensuring that there were no dangers or abnormalities. Extreme Fire asked, "Zimo, are you really intending to help this Kunlun Lord exterminate some traitors? He seems violent and bloodthirsty, not a kind soul." "I agree." Yin Qi nodded. "This Kunlun Lord is capricious and can kill at any moment. Now that he invited you to be the commander, there's a high chance he'll turn to deal with you after the battle is over." "Yes?" Su Zimo nodded. "I've thought of everything you guys are worried about. Since this Kunlun Lord can rule over the Kunlun race and threaten the Kunlun ruins, he's not weak. He did not use his full strength when he fought me earlier on. Of course, I held back as well. Let's follow them and check out the situation first. We'll be on guard and adapt to the situation at that time." "All right, since you're prepared, I won't worry anymore." Extreme Fire nodded. "Right?" Suddenly, Su Zimo asked, "Can you guys sense what's the true form of the Kunlun Lord?" Both Extreme Fire and Yin Qi shook their heads. To be able to intimidate everyone in the Kunlun ruins, his true form should not be an ordinary demon beast, Su Zimo murmured. "Could it be one of the primordial races?" Extreme Fire said. Su Zimo shook his head. "No. I checked with my spirit consciousness on the sacrificial platform earlier on. There are no other primordial races in the Kunlun ruins. However, the strange thing is why the god race appeared in the Kunlun ruins. Extreme Fire and Yin-Chi were puzzled as well. Furthermore, the three god race beings did not know Su Zimo. In other words, the three god race beings were not from Tianhuang Mainland. However, if they were not from Tianhuang Mainland, where did they come from? Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled what the storyteller said. It seemed like in the primordial era, there were 8 primordial races and the god race was not among them. 8 primordial races: god race, Kunlun, taboo, and primordial war. Su Zimo had a feeling that the god race must have played an extremely important role in the primordial war. The god race might be the key to uncovering the truth of the primordial war. However, the power of this Kunlun Lord sure is terrifying. Extreme Fireside. Apart from Mahayana patriarchs and emperors, the power of this Kunlun Lord is even more terrifying than any super sect in Tianhuang Mainland. His strength was consolidated through history after all, Yin-Chi said. To think that there would be traitors in the Kunlun race. Extreme Fire continued. From the looks of it, the strength of the traitor army isn't weak either. To think that the Kunlun Lord would mobilize such a large force. I wonder who this traitor leader is to be able to go against a half-martial ancestor like the Kunlun Lord and even cause him such cautiousness. The narrator was casual, but the listener was attentive. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and a thought flashed through his mind. There was a possibility. Could it be? Chapter 1507, Paintings. Chapter 1507, Paintings. What's wrong? Extreme Fire and Yin-Chi could not help but ask when they saw the change in Su Zimo's expression. Su Zimo said slowly, "Night Spirit." What? Extreme Fire and Extreme Fire exclaimed in shock. That was a rather bold guess. However, upon careful thought, it was not impossible. If Night Spirit was still alive, he would have searched for Su Zimo long ago on Tianhuang Mainland. The most likely place for him to appear was the Kunlun ruins. That was because this land was closely related to Night Spirit. This was Night Spirit's home. Night Spirit's ancestor was buried in this land. Furthermore, given Night Spirit's combat strength, if he had returned, he would definitely not be unknown here. There was a high chance that Night Spirit could become an overlord and fight against the Kunlun Lord. What are we waiting for then? Yin-Chi said in a deep voice, "Let's kill our way out now and meet with Night Spirit." There's no hurry. Su Zimo had a calm expression. Firstly, this is only my speculation and isn't confirmed yet. Secondly, even if the traitor leader is truly Night Spirit, there's no need for us to rush now. Extreme Fire nodded as well. The Kunlun Lord is leading an army to fight personally tomorrow. This means that the situation over there should be in a stalemate and Night Spirit can still hold out. If we stay here, we can know every single move of the Kunlun Lord. That's much more useful than killing our way out now. There's no hurry. We'll know the truth tomorrow, Su Zimo said faintly. The three of them did not sleep the entire night. The next morning, Su Zimo and the other two arrived at the sacrificial platform early. The Kunlun army had not left and was guarding this place for the entire night. About an hour later, the Kunlun Lord and 3 white-robed god race beings descended on the sacrificial platform. Everyone. The Kunlun Lord surveyed his surroundings and declared, "I've just received news that the traitors have been defeated. Our Kunlun army has already attacked their lair. Right now, there aren't many traitors left and they're guarding the god-slaying valley with their lives." The Kunlun Lord waved his arm and shouted, "Everyone, follow me. Kill the traitors and flatten the valley. Kill the traitors and flatten the valley. Kill the traitors and flatten the valley." The Kunlun race beneath roared in a terrifying manner. The Kunlun Lord pressed his hands against the air to indicate silence and said, "Clansmen, the guests I invited will arrive at the Kunlun ruins today as well. At that time, we'll join forces with them and attack from the front and back. We'll definitely be able to kill all the traitors in God-slaying valley. Kill, kill, kill." The Kunlun army roared. The Kunlun Lord continued, "At that time, these guests will help us dispel the Kunlun barrier and we can leave this place and return to Tianhuang mainland. At that time, we can advance to the Mahayana realm and comprehend divine powers. At that time, we can break free from the restraints of heaven and earth and our lifespans will increase. At that time, we can dominate a part of Tianhuang mainland instead of being trapped in these ruins without any reputation." The Kunlun race beneath howled excitedly. The words of the Kunlun Lord were infectious. However, right from the beginning, Su Zimo was expressionless. He was curious who the guests mentioned by the Kunlun Lord were. The God race. Would the God race come to the Kunlun ruins? "Let's go." The Kunlun Lord waved his hand. The Kunlun army soldiers stood up one after another and rode on gigantic spirit vessels and warships, speeding towards the west with a murderous intent. The Kunlun Lord, 3 God race beings, Su Zimo, and the other 4 commanders were leading a massive warship. Everyone stood on the deck of the vessel against the wind. How do we differentiate the traitors from our Kunlun army? Suddenly, Su Zimo asked. Extremely easy. The Kunlun Lord laughed. The Kunlun race under my lead has gray ribbons tied around their waists. As for those traitors, they have purple gold ribbons. All you have to remember is to kill all living beings with the purple gold ribbons. Su Zimo nodded. After pausing for a moment, Su Zimo asked again, "What's the background of this traitor leader? He seems to have quite a bit of prestige and can even gather an army to fight against you." "Fufu," the Kunlun Lord sneered. "It's just a beast that returned from outside. He's merely relying on his bloodline and the reputation left behind by his ancestors." The people that followed him were all stubborn old fogies. A cold glint flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. He was almost certain that the so-called traitor leader was Night Spirit. At the thought of meeting Night Spirit, Su Zimo's heart burned. There was nothing more important to him than Night Spirit's survival. The army sped forward with all their might. About 2 hours later, countless corpses could be seen piled on the ruins in the wilderness. The rivers of blood were formed not long ago. Some of the corpses had purple gold ribbons tied around their waists. Some of them had gray ribbons. It could be deduced that this was the first battlefield. The battlefield extended into the distance. Corpses were strewn everywhere and became more concentrated. It was clear how tragic the battle was. Before long, not far ahead, a gigantic palace could be seen. The top of the hall was already shattered and smashed, leaving only 4 walls standing. "This is the lair of those traitors." The Kunlun Lord pointed at the dilapidated palace and laughed. "However, it has been completely occupied by my army." Su Zimo focused his gaze. On the walls of the dilapidated palace, he saw vivid paintings that seemed to be describing something. "What is that?" Su Zimo pointed at the paintings on the wall and suddenly asked. The Kunlun Lord swept his gaze casually and pouted. "It's just some old history related to the Primordial War. It's all long in the past." "The Primordial War?" Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. "I'll go down and take a look." "Up to you. However, you're the commander of the new army. Don't linger too long. We'll wait for you at the God-slaying valley." The Kunlun Lord reminded. He was not worried that Su Zimo and the other 2 would escape. Nobody could escape from his control in the Kunlun ruins. In a flash, Su Zimo leaped down from the warship. Extreme Fire and Yin Qi followed closely behind. The spirit vessels of the Kunlun army streaked past the palace and sped towards the west. Stepping on the corpses and ruins, Su Zimo arrived at the entrance of the palace and paused for a moment. He had a hunch. This palace might very well uncover the true secret of the Primordial War. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo entered the palace and looked at the first painting on his left. The first painting was simple. It merely showed a long and deep valley. At the end of the valley stood a gigantic cave. The cave surged with a rainbow glow and was unfathomable. A few figures walked out from the rainbow cave. Chapter 1508, God's Mainland. Chapter 1508, God's Mainland. This valley. Nian, she turned her head slightly and murmured, I heard from the Kunlun Lord mention a valley called the God-Slaying Valley. Could this be there? It's possible. Extreme Fire nodded. The three of their gazes landed on the few people who walked out of the Rainbow Cave. Their characteristics were way too obvious. They had golden hair, blue eyes, and were tall with handsome features. The God race. The three of them exchanged glances and could see the shock in the other's eyes. The painting was simple and ordinary, merely showing that. However, there were two small words beneath the painting. Instinctively, Su Zimo murmured softly, God's Mainland. What does that mean? Extreme Fire and Yin Shi frowned slightly in confusion. God's Mainland? Murmuring softly, Su Zimo walked forward and looked at the second painting. The style in this painting changed drastically. Although it was still in the valley, it was dyed red with blood and many corpses were piled in the valley. All of those corpses were corpses of the God race. Above the corpses of the God race beings stood two menacing demon beasts that were howling in the direction of the Rainbow Cave. Although it was only a painting, the three of them could still sense the terrifying aura of the demon beasts, as though they could penetrate the walls. It was shocking. All three of them were shocked. That was because the menacing demon beasts looked exactly the same as Night Spirit's true body. However, their bodies were much larger. One of them was purple and comparatively slender. One of them was golden and had an extremely strong body. That was a primordial taboo Hou. Furthermore, these were two Hous, a male and a female. Extreme Fire was dumbfounded for a moment before exclaiming, Heavens! In the primordial era, the taboo race had two Hous. At the end of the valley, God race beings were still spilling out from the cave that shone with a rainbow luster. One after another, the God race beings walked out of the cave and charged towards the two Hous. The scene froze. The painting was lifelike. When the three of them stood before it, it was as though they had traveled back in time to the primordial era and were witnessing the battle personally. However, there were still countless questions in their eyes. Su Zimo looked down. Below the painting, there were also some small words. God race invasion? Nian Shi's heart skipped a beat when she saw those words. Su Zimo and Extreme Fire were stunned as well. The two of them turned back instinctively and looked at the first painting. The information revealed by connecting the two paintings was way too much. After a momentary silence, Extreme Fire attempted, Is this so-called God's Mainland an existence similar to Tianhuang Mainland? Probably. Su Zimo nodded. The universe is vast and boundless. There must be countless worlds like Tianhuang Mainland. In other words, the God race was not an existence of Tianhuang Mainland. They were the true outsiders. With that, there were many things that could be explained. The bloodline and cultivation techniques of the God race were extremely different from the various races of Tianhuang Mainland. After the bloodline of the God race was awakened, they were born with bloodline phenomenons. The records left behind by Fairy Ling Long stated that the primordial era consisted of 8 primordial races and did not include the God race. It was also because the God race had not appeared in Tianhuang Mainland right in the beginning. The foreign words in the storage bag of the God race, being that Su Zimo killed in the Kunlun ruins, were from the God race. The world and the memories of the God race man should be the God's Mainland. Extreme Fire looked at the rainbow cave in the second painting and said sternly, From the looks of it, this cave should be the tunnel that connects Tianhuang Mainland and God's Mainland. Only by passing through here can the God race enter Tianhuang Mainland. Su Zimo nodded and continued reading. The third painting still showed the deep valley, but peace had returned to it. The purple Hou and golden Hou leaned against one another and sat at the top of the valley. An egg laid quietly in the embrace of two Hous. At the other end of the valley, some God race beings were fleeing in panic. Below the third painting were small words as well, Son of Divine Hou. Extreme Fire said in a deep voice, From the looks of it, this purple Hou gave birth to a son, and the golden Hou took care of him day and night. Some of the God race beings seized this opportunity to pass through the tunnel and enter Tianhuang Mainland. Su Zimo nodded. It was easy to connect the events of the primordial era through these paintings. The three of them continued forward and looked at the fourth painting. Finally, the valley was gone from the fourth painting. There were many living beings drawn on it. Apart from the god race, the dragon, Kunlun, and the other races of the primordial 8 races were present. Not only that, there were 2 even more terrifying demon beasts in the fourth painting with auras similar to the divine Hou. The taboo dragon phoenix. The taboo Tianhuang. Many primordial races gathered and some god race beings stood in the middle, as though they were talking to the surrounding primordial races, the dragon phoenix and Tianhuang. There were small words beneath the fourth painting as well, discord sowed by the god race. At that point, many things were clear even without the three of them looking further. In the primordial era, the Hou might have been bloodthirsty and aloof, at odds with the primordial races, the dragon phoenix and Tianhuang. However, the true cause of the primordial war was the god race. The god race invasion was the invasion of another civilization. If the defense against them failed, the civilization of Tianhuang Mainland would have vanished completely and all the other races would have been enslaved by the god race. The divine house realized how terrifying this matter was and guarded Kunlun to stop the god race. However, due to the birth of the son of the divine house, the god race seized the opportunity to enter Tianhuang Mainland. They instigated the other 2 taboos and the primordial 8 races to wage war against the divine house, triggering that earth-shaking primordial war. Nian Qi's expression was a little pale. No matter what, the bloodline of the god race flowed within her. She had not expected that it would be her ancestors who triggered the greatest catastrophe in Tianhuang Mainland and indirectly destroyed the 3 taboos and countless races. The fifth painting. The scene had already shifted to the Kunlun mountain range. The male golden hour defended the peak of the Kunlun mountain. Under his lead were 4 demon beasts with torrential demonic chi and terrifying auras. Beneath the 4 demon beasts were countless living beings. Among the thousands of races, many of them stood on the side of the divine Hou. Su Zimo's gaze gathered slightly and landed on a demon beast under the lead of the divine Hou. This demon beast was unique. It had the body of a goat, the face of a human, eyes beneath its armpits, teeth of a tiger and hands of a human, grayish-black all over. Its mouth was extremely terrifying and almost extended to the back of its head, as though it could devour millions of living beings. I got it. Su Zimo pointed at the demon beast and suddenly said, the Kunlun Lord should be a Tao Tai one. This Tao Tai should be the Kunlun Lord's ancestor. The Tao Tai was extremely gluttony and ate everything. Legend has it that when the Tao Tai turned ruthless, it would even dare to eat the primordial races. Furthermore, the Tao Tai had a huge appetite. Even primordial races like the dragon and Kunlun races could not compare to his appetite. Even in the primordial era, the notorious Tao Tai was not weaker than the primordial races. If not for the fact that there were only a few of them, the Tao Tai could have been ranked among the primordial races. Chapter 1509, Guarding Kunlun. Chapter 1509, Guarding Kunlun. The fifth painting showed the Golden Hou leading the 10,000 races to fight against the Dragon Phoenix and Tianhuang, who led a massive army of the primordial 8 races as well as many other living beings. Although it was only a single painting, it displayed the majestic scene of the primordial war before their very eyes. All 3 of them were mighty figures who ruled over a region. Furthermore, Su Zimo was the #1 monster incarnate in history and could suppress any one of the same cultivation realm as well as half-martial ancestors. Unless a patriarch appeared, it was difficult for anyone to fight against him. However, the 3 of them felt as insignificant as a speck of dust in the face of that magnificent battlefield. They were way too ordinary in such a battle. The moment the battle broke out, they might be drowned. Why? Why doesn't the divine Hou explain? It was still difficult for Nian Qi to accept the fact right now. Perhaps out of disdain. Su Zimo looked at the figure in the painting that stood at the peak of Kunlun with its head raised. Even against 2 taboos, the Dragon Phoenix and Tianhuang, as well as the army of the primordial 8 races, it was still fearless. The painting was extremely lifelike. In fact, the pride, disdain, coldness and killing intent in the golden Hous' eyes were completely revealed. Extreme Fire shook his head as well. Given the development of the situation, it's not something that can be explained with a few words. Beneath the fifth painting were the words Primordial War. Suddenly, Extreme Fire frowned. Strange, why isn't that purple Hou in the painting? Given the painting skills of this master, there's no way he would make such a mistake. Instinctively, Su Zimo looked towards the sixth painting. The sixth painting was back to the God-slaying valley. In the valley, there was a demon beast with a torrential killing intent. Its back was facing Tianhuang Mainland, and it was facing the cave with a rainbow luster, roaring in rage. That demon beast was the female purple Hou. Countless god race beings were surging out of that cave. Some of them wore heavy armor that shone with a golden glow. Some of them rode on divine dragons that resembled gigantic lizards with wings. Some of them rode on tall, armored horses and wielded spears. It was an army of the god race. Previously, the god race was merely testing the waters. This time round, the god race had truly launched an attack on Tianhuang Mainland. The god race experts at the lead had terrifying auras, and a mere painting was enough for the three of them to feel suffocated. Those were emperors of the god race. Furthermore, there was more than one. Beneath this painting were the same words as those on the fifth painting, Primordial War. I got it, Extreme Fire said in a deep voice, while the Dragon Phoenix, Kunlun, and the Primordial 8 races launched the Primordial War against Kunlun. The God race launched a war against Tianhuang Mainland as well. Everyone only knows of the earth-shaking battle outside Kunlun. However, they don't know that in the depths of Kunlun, there was a divine Hou who blocked the god-slaying valley with its back against Tianhuang Mainland, defending against the god race army single-handedly to protect Kunlun. This was the true Primordial War. The three of them watched everything in a daze, and for some reason, their eyes reddened. Throughout history, the world had misunderstood the divine Hou. The divine Hou was a taboo. However, he was not the god of massacre, but a true god that protected Tianhuang Mainland. The three of them could not imagine what would have happened to Tianhuang Mainland if not for the two divine Hous defending Kunlun. After standing in front of the two paintings for a long time, the three of them continued forward and arrived before the seventh painting. From the seventh painting, it could be roughly seen that the Primordial War had ended. The Kunlun mountain range had been reduced to ruins. Corpses were strewn everywhere and blood stained the vast skies. Mountains and rivers collapsed, the firmaments were pierced, and the stars were destroyed. It was a tragic sight. There were countless corpses of the god race piled up in the god-slaying valley. No more god race beings came out from the Rainbow Cave. The purple Hou laid limply on the corpses of many god race beings. Although it was covered in injuries and its life force was draining rapidly, its eyes were dim as it glared at the cave stubbornly. The golden Hou was defeated and had already retreated to the god-slaying valley to stand shoulder to shoulder with the purple Hou. As for the Dragon Phoenix and Kunlun taboos, they abandoned the Primordial 8 races and chased after the golden Hou the entire way. Upon arriving, they witnessed the scene at the god-slaying valley. It was as though the two taboos understood everything instantly. Both taboos lowered their heads in regret against the two divine Hous. However, the Primordial War was irreversible. Both of them were severely injured and helpless. This battle had exhausted all their lives. Even at the end of the battle, the purple Hou did not retreat at all and killed all the god race beings in the god-slaying valley. The seventh painting, Death of the Taboos. The Dragon Phoenix, Kunlun, and two divine Hous were severely injured in this battle. The two divine Hous died. Not long after, the Dragon Phoenix and Kunlun were severely injured as well and failed their tribulations, turning into ashes. Su Zimo finally understood why the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder had once told him that the Dragon Phoenix was filled with regrets before its death. The regret was not because of the wounds left behind by this battle. It was because the Dragon Phoenix felt guilty towards the two divine Hous. It was true that the god race instigated the Primordial War. However, it was not without the selfish motives of the Dragon Phoenix and Kunlun. One could imagine that the Divine House were the strongest in the primordial era, with two of them, the Dragon Phoenix and Kunlun, must have been wary of them. They might have had thoughts of suppressing the Divine House. That was why they were able to be provoked by the God race, which resulted in the primordial war. Su Zimo laughed mockingly. The two poor Divine House. Even though they protected Kunlun and Tianhuang Mainland, they were misunderstood by the world in the end. The most tragic thing was that even their descendant was despised and hunted by the later generations, almost dying in Tianhuang Mainland. It's all because of the God race. Extreme Fire said hatefully with rage surging in his eyes. Nian Qi pursed her lips silently with a pale expression. Although she had nothing to do with the primordial war, the bloodline of the God race flowed through her body. She felt guilty towards Night Spirit and the entire Tianhuang Mainland. The three of them continued and arrived before the 8th painting. This was also the final painting. Above the Kunlun ruins, the golden Hou and purple Hou burned their final breaths and released a blinding light that enveloped the Kunlun ruins. Both Divine House looked at the Divine Hou egg not far away with deep reluctance and worry. The words beneath the 8th painting were, Kunlun Barrier. At that point, realization flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. He finally understood the origin of the Kunlun Barrier. He finally understood the reason why the barrier existed. On the one hand, the Kunlun Barrier was to seal the Rainbow Cave and prevent the God race from invading again. On the other hand, it was to protect Night Spirit. With the existence of the Kunlun Barrier, the Kunlun ruins was an isolated place. The people outside could not enter, and neither could those inside get out. It was even more impossible for the primordial races to step into the Kunlun ruins. The remaining races that remained were forces of the two Divine House. Night Spirit could only grow safely and become a taboo in such an environment. As for Night Spirit, he would grow and rule over the former forces of the Kunlun ruins, turning into the new Kunlun Lord. Chapter 1510, Son of the Divine House. Chapter 1510, Son of the Divine House. The two Divine House put in painstaking effort and were worried about the God race and Night Spirit even if they had to die. That was why they burned their lives to leave behind the Kunlun Barrier. Unfortunately, by some freak coincidence, Fairy Ling Long entered the Kunlun ruins and took Night Spirit away, placing him in the Ling Long secret ground. When Night Spirit finally returned in this generation, the Kunlun ruins were no longer a world for him. Su Zimo looked at the 8 paintings with a conflicted expression and remained silent for a long time. The 8 paintings resolved all the doubts and revealed all the secrets of the primordial war. However, the 8 drawings did not describe the tragic, miserable, and sorrowful aftermath of the battle. If not for the great strokes of this master painter, if they had not arrived at the ruins and saw the 8 paintings, who would have known the truth of the primordial war? The two Divine House must hate the God race immensely. That's the reason why they left such killing intent and resentment in the Kunlun Barrier. Nian Qi said dejectedly. Unlike Su Zimo and Extreme Fire, Nian Qi felt extremely terrible after looking at the 8 paintings and felt endless guilt and self-blame. She did not know how she should face Night Spirit and Su Zimo in the future. It was her ancestors who triggered the primordial war. Night Spirit's parents were indirectly killed. Countless races were indirectly killed. Countless innocent living beings were buried in the ruins. In fact, Nian Qi felt as though the blood flowing through her body was dirty. Nian Qi, it's not your fault. Don't think too much. Noticing the change in Nian Qi's expression, Su Zimo vaguely guessed something and consoled her softly. Nian Qi forced a smile and lowered her head in a daze. I got it. Right then, Extreme Fire said in a deep voice, when Night Spirit was placed in the Ling Long secret ground in the ancient era, the Kunlun ruins became leaderless and the old factions fought against one another. Given the Tao Tai's combat strength, it was easy for him to become the Kunlun Lord. The current Kunlun Lord is the descendant of the Tao Tai in the past. Now that Night Spirit has returned and wants to rule over the Kunlun race, there will definitely be a conflict with this current Tao Tai. That's the reason why the so-called battle to exterminate the traitors broke out. After a brief pause, extreme fire continued. However, time passed. After so many years, the Tao Tai race has long established supreme prestige in the Kunlun ruins. Even night spirits' return can't compare to it. Su Zimo nodded. But no matter what, the Tao Tai was just a part of the divine house forces in the past. Night Spirit is the true Kunlun Lord. Through the Tao Tai, they knew that Night Spirit was not alone in the Kunlun ruins. Even after countless years, there were still many Kunlun clansmen who stood firmly on Night Spirit's side. I'm just curious. Extreme Fire frowned. Although the Kunlun race on the side of Tao Tai is massive, how did Night Spirit lose so badly given his capabilities? Narrowing his gaze slightly, Su Zimo recalled the words of the Kunlun Lord, and his heart skipped a beat. The God race. What? Extreme Fire asked instinctively. Su Zimo said, the Kunlun Lord once said that the guests he invited would also arrive at the Kunlun ruins today. There's a high chance that those so-called guests are from the God race. You mean to say that the Kunlun barrier that sealed the Rainbow Cave might not be able to defend against the God race anymore? Extreme Fire's heart skipped a beat. That's a possibility. Su Zimo said deeply, this barrier has existed for countless years after all. It's only normal for its power to deplete. Do you remember when we first arrived at the Kunlun barrier? I crossed it. Extreme Fire nodded. Su Zimo continued, under normal circumstances, even I can't pass through the barrier left behind by two divine house burning away their lives. But now, it's not surprising for the God race to be able to cross it since I was able to do so as well. Su Zimo's expression was cold as killing intent surged in his eyes. If this Tao Tai is only fighting with Night Spirit for the position of the Kunlun Lord, it's not considered a great crime. However, his crime of colluding with the God race is unforgivable. Extreme Fire turned murderous as well. Let's go and kill him until the world is overturned. Without a word, Su Zimo had already leaped up and sped towards the God-slaying valley in the west. Extreme Fire followed closely behind. Nian Qi hesitated slightly and followed hurriedly. God-slaying valley. Many Kunlun clansmen with purple gold ribbons tied around their waists guarded the entrance of the valley. Looking towards the extreme west of the valley, one could see God race beings exiting one after another from that gigantic cave that shone with a rainbow luster. Those God race beings wielded gigantic swords and spears and were clad in armor. Their expressions were cold, but none of them could pass through the God-slaying valley. That was because there was a terrifying figure with torrential demonic chi in the middle of the valley. The figure was dozens of feet tall and was covered in purple gold scales. Its tail was long and its tailbone was incomparably sharp, as though it could penetrate everything. The head of the demon beast was gigantic and resembled a wolf's head. However, it was more menacing than a wolf's head. A set of sharp teeth shone with a cold glint. The type of damage that would be caused by the shocking bite strength of that gigantic head coupled with those sharp teeth was unimaginable. The forelegs of the demon beast shone with purple gold flames and melted the God race corpses beneath them. The God race beings charged forward and were killed by the demon beast. Beneath its feet were corpses of the God race that flowed with warm blood. Roar! The purple gold demon beast opened its mouth and charged towards the rainbow cave not far away, letting out a deafening roar with a chilling, killing intent. In that roar, all the Kunlun clansmen on the other end of the valley seemed to be stunned as they stopped in their tracks. Ha 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 ha. Right then, a burst of laughter sounded. Not far to the east, a black patch of spirit vessels sped over. On the gigantic warship in the lead, the Tao Tai and the four commanders stood at the bow. Demonic chi surged and they were laughing. Another 10 million Kunlun army had descended. The Kunlun clansmen that guarded the entrance of the valley with the purple gold ribbon revealed despair in their eyes. There were only a few 100,000 of them left. Furthermore, every single Kunlun clansman was injured. The difference in numbers and strength was too great. The final hope in their hearts was destroyed along with the descent of Tao Tai. The former commander of the Divine, Hou looked back at the tall figure in the valley and sighed gently. Although the son of the divine house was young, he already had the bearing they possessed in the past. If not for the invasion of the god race, even if the Tao Tai side had the advantage of 100 times in numbers, they might not be able to secure victory against the head of the son of the divine house. However, the son of the divine house was unable to escape. One side was the Kunlun race. The other side was the god race. The son of the divine house could only make a choice. His choice was the same as his mother's. He guarded the god-slaying valley alone and isolated all the god race beings. Even if he had to die in battle, he would not permit a single god race being to step into Tianhuang Mainland. Chapter 1511, God of Tianhuang Mainland. Chapter 1511, God of Tianhuang Mainland. Fufu. With a relaxed expression, the Tao Tai looked at the Kunlun race beings guarding the entrance of the valley and shook his head with a smile. What are you guys still holding on for? That beast is merely struggling to survive and won't be able to hold on for long. Tao Tai, a half-martial ancestor leading these Kunlun clansmen, shouted and dragged his injured body forward, saying sternly, "How dare you? The master's corpses are right here, and yet you dare to point your saber and weapon at my young master. You even dare to call him a beast. Are you truly not afraid of divine retribution? Our master's spirits are in heaven. If they sense this, they will be able to kill you here even with a wisp of their souls." In the valley not far away, 2 demon beast corpses 1,000 feet tall stood upright. One of them had golden bones while the other had purple ones. They were the 2 divine house back then. The 2 divine house stood side by side with their backs facing Tianhuang Mainland as they gazed in the direction of the Rainbow Cave. Although they were only 2 corpses, they still emitted a shuddering aura. The Tao Tai frowned slightly. The 2 divine house died countless years ago, and there was no way they would have any remnant souls remaining. The saying of divine retribution made him scoff even further. However, he was still wary. In the past, the 2 divine house were way too notorious. Furthermore, his ancestors were the underlings of the 2 divine house. In his bloodline, he possessed an innate fear towards the divine Hou race. This time round, if he had not joined forces with the god race, he would not have dared to challenge the divine Hou race either. Humph! The Tao Tai sneered. The Kunlun clansman on the other side. Listen up. I can offer you a chance. If you submit and bow down to me now, I can let you off and treat everyone equally in the future. If you refuse to submit, I'll treat you guys as traitors and kill you without mercy. Ha 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 ha. Opposite, the Kunlun half-martial ancestor roared in laughter with a sorrowful expression. Traitors? What a joke and immense irony. The young master is a divine Hou and is the true Kunlun lord. Even your ancestors were the underlings of my masters. How dare you boast brazenly now and attempt to kill your master? Tao Tai, you're the real traitor. Han Quan, you're truly stubborn. The Tao Tai sneered. So many years have passed and you're still hung up over the past? Let me tell you, I'm the true Kunlun lord. How dare this lad fight against me? Half-martial ancestor Han Quan sneered as well. Tao Tai, no matter how many years have passed, our clansmen will remember the teachings of the masters. Even if they had to die in battle, our masters refused to let the god race step foot into Tianhuang Mainland. Yet, what did you do? What are you guys doing? There were only hundreds of thousands Kunlun clansmen on the side of half-martial ancestor Han Quan. There was way too much of a difference between him and the Kunlun army that consisted of tens of millions of troops on the side of the Tao Tai. However, at that moment, although half-martial ancestor Han Quan pointed at the Tao Tai and the Kunlun army opposite him while shouting, the Kunlun army with millions of troops was silent. Countless Kunlun clansmen lowered their heads and did not dare to meet his gaze. The Tao Tai had a dark expression as he said slowly, "That's right. Our masters have their backs against Tianhuang Mainland and protected Kunlun. However, what happened to them? They died. I don't wish to die, nor do I wish for these Kunlun clansmen who follow me to die. After so many years, the god race has recuperated and is even stronger than the primordial era. As for Tianhuang Mainland, it no longer has the two divine house. They don't even have a single taboo. You're truly naive to think that you guys alongside a conjoint body greenhorn will be able to stop the god race. The Kunlun clansmen at the entrance of the valley had dim expressions, and their eyes were filled with despair. They knew in their hearts that the Tao Tai was right. The god race had made a comeback. However, they could not defend against it. The Tao Tai said indifferently, "Han Quan, that's the situation right now. Anyone that goes against the surging tides or stands in its way will be crushed into nothingness." "Tides my ass." Half-martial ancestor Han Quan sneered. "The Kunlun ruins has a divine powers forbidden region. Even patriarchs of the god race won't dare to barge in." "Foo-foo." Right then, a chuckle sounded beside the Tao Tai. Since things had come to this, the three white-robed god race beings no longer hid their identities and auras. Their white robes exploded one after another, revealing golden armor beneath. The black hair of the three god race beings turned into golden hair rapidly. All their disguises were gone. Even without Mahayana patriarchs, 2 armies of our god race are enough to flatten the Kunlun ruins. Those are 2 armies formed by conjoint body mighty figures and half-martial ancestors of our god's mainland. Everywhere the god's sword is pointed at, everyone will have to submit to it. A god race being smiled faintly and declared proudly, "The ones entering now are only the vanguard troops." Half-martial ancestor Han Quan glared at the Tao Tai and grit his teeth. "Tao Tai, you've forgotten about your roots. How dare you join forces with the god race? Are you even worthy of being the Kunlun Lord?" "Whether or not I'm worthy is not decided by you." Gradually, a look of impatience appeared on the Tao Tai's face as he shook his head gently. "At the end of the day, history belongs to the victors. You guys will definitely die in this battle, so who will remember you in the future? The later generations will only remember me. I'm the true Kunlun Lord. If you guys refuse to submit, don't blame me for being merciless." The Tao Tai waved his hand and ordered coldly, "Kill." Ah! Right then, a long howl sounded from the distant horizon like thunder. It rumbled and the clouds in the skies dispersed. Although the howl was still far away, many Kunlun clansmen present felt their ears buzz. It was clear how terrifying the howl was. The Tao Tai smiled gently and said smugly, "Han Quan, the new commander that I've just recruited is here. I can let you witness his capabilities." "How strong?" The hearts of half-martial ancestor Han Quan and the others skipped a beat. When he heard that howl, the massive body that was fighting against the god race in the valley shuddered and looked back in disbelief. He caught sight of a familiar figure. Green robes and black hair. The cold and merciless eyes of the divine Hous surged with endless longing and joy. "Roar!" The divine Ho howled into the skies emotionally as well. The 2 howls echoed in the skies of the Kunlun ruins. A god race mighty figure seized the opportunity to charge forward and slashed a blood scar on the divine Ho. The divine Ho was enraged and turned to chomp down, ripping the god race being into 2 as golden blood splattered everywhere. Once again, the divine Ho charged into the army of the god race. Su Zimo's expression was cold as he rushed over like lightning. Extreme Fire and Yin Qi followed closely behind. The 3 of them looked at the figure that was fighting against many god race beings in the god-slaying valley and could not help but recall the paintings they saw in the palace. In the paintings, a divine host stood in the middle of the god-slaying valley with its back facing Tianhuang Mainland, defending against the god race army and Kunlun single-handedly. The scene before them seemed to be one with the divine Ho in the paintings. Their vision gradually turned blurry. Enduring the misunderstandings of the later generations, the fear of the world and the hostility of the 10,000 races, Night Spirit stood alone in the valley with his back facing Tianhuang Mainland, guarding Kunlun. Even though no one knew about it, even though he might die, Night Spirit still made his choice. Just like his mother, the divine Ho was the true Kunlun Lord and God of Tianhuang Mainland, eternal sacred king. Chapter 1512, Wrath of Desolate Marshal. Chapter 1512, Wrath of Desolate Marshal. Desolate Marshal? The Tao Tai nodded slightly at Su Zimo with a smile. You came at the right time. That beast in the valley is the leader of this rebellion. If you can kill him, I'll remember your contribution. Su Zimo arrived beside Tao Tai and looked in the direction of the god-slaying valley expressionlessly. Why? The Tianhuang mainland glanced askance. If you don't make a move, you won't have a chance to render your meritorious accomplishments after the two god race armies descend upon Tianhuang mainland and kill that beast. He won't die, Su Zimo suddenly said. The Tao Tai frowned slightly. Su Zimo pointed in the direction of God-slaying valley and said, Do you know who he is? Desolate Marshal, what are you trying to say? The Tao Tai narrowed his eyes slightly with a cold glint. Su Zimo said, He's not a beast. His name is Night Spirit, and he's my brother. Turning his head slowly, he looked at the Tao Tai who was right in front of him and said slowly, Sworn brother. The moment those words were said, the entire space seemed to have frozen. The atmosphere suddenly turned extremely strange. Su Zimo and the Tao Tai looked at one another in the eyes just like that. Suddenly, the Tao Tai opened his mouth and released a terrifying suction force, engulfing towards Su Zimo. Almost at the same time, Su Zimo's glabella shone with a green beam of light. The creation lotus platform burst forth and spun slowly, releasing rays of light that smashed towards the gigantic mouth of the Tao Tai. Although the Tao Tai had a huge appetite, he could not eat the creation lotus platform. If the attack landed, it could smash the Tao Tai's head into sludge. As a half-martial ancestor and the Kunlun Lord, the Tao Tai received countless treasures and resources in the Kunlun ruins. He reacted swiftly and retreated right away. However, he felt two palms appear on his arms. He could not break free even with his burst power. The two of them were way too close. At this distance, Su Zimo had 1,000 methods to kill the Tao Tai. The latter did not even have the chance to escape. Right in front of everyone, the Tao Tai's head was penetrated by the creation green lotus. It entered from the latter's gigantic mouth and created an enormous hole of blood. With that, the Tao Tai's consciousness was shattered. Gripping the arms of the Tao Tai with both hands, Su Zimo kneed forward and smashed against his chest like a galloping horse. Snap! The Tao Tai's chest caved in deeply and most of his bones were shattered. Shing! Flashes of blood spewed out. Su Zimo tore off two of the Tao Tai's arms. In that burst, Su Zimo attacked with hatred and murderous intent, releasing all the killing intent in his heart instantly. The Tao Tai's head shattered, and his chest caved in. His arms were torn, and his corpse fell heavily into a pool of blood in the distance, not moving at all. Even Mahayana patriarchs would definitely die from the injuries, let alone half-martial ancestors. This scene caused an uproar. The Kunlun army on the side of the Tao Tai had just launched an attack on the God-slaying valley. Nobody expected the Kunlun Lord to be killed by this new commander immediately after. The entire process happened too quickly. The Tao Tai was dead in the blink of an eye. Before the massive Kunlun army could react, Su Zimo had already attacked once more. Swoosh! In a flash, he arrived before the three god race mighty figures. You must have a death wish. The three god race mighty figures channeled their blood chi and released blinding golden blood chi with a terrifying might. In fact, 3 bloodline phenomenons even appeared behind the 3 of them. Om, Ma, and I, Pa, Me, Hom. 1. Su Zimo chanted Sanskrit and released all 6 words of the damning mantra. At this distance, even god race mighty figures could not be completely unaffected. The 3 god race mighty figures shuddered, and their blood chi was chaotic. The condensation of their bloodline phenomenons paused momentarily as well. Right then, Su Zimo conjured hand seals and 6 damning dermic seals rained down with 6 words of the damning mantra, engulfing the 3 god race beings. Bang! 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 The bloodline phenomenons of the 3 god race mighty figures was shattered by the 6 words of the damning mantra and damning dermic seal before they could even be formed completely. Su Zimo flipped his hand, and whipped the head of a god race being. His entire arm looked limp and weak like the trunk of a divine elephant. Piak! He slapped the god race mighty figure on the cheek. Crack! 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 The head of the god race mighty figure spun dozens of times around his neck before coming to a gradual stop. His neck bones were completely shattered. The essence spirit of the god race being was crushed by a single palm strike as well. Another god race mighty figure was shocked. The storage ring on his finger flashed, and a gigantic two-handed sword appeared in his palm. The third god race mighty figure swung his gigantic sword at the same time. The blood chi of two god race mighty figures burst forth. Golden light surged on their gigantic swords. It was dazzling and divine. Su Zimo did not dodge or avoid. He strode forward and threw out two punches in reverse against the blades of the two gigantic swords. The two god race mighty figures were delighted. In their opinion, Desolate Marshal's palm would definitely be killed by them. In the eyes of the two god race mighty figures, they could even see blood. Clang! It was different from what they had imagined. When the two gigantic swords struck Su Zimo's fist, not only was there no bloodlight, there were no injuries at all. However, the two god race mighty figures felt an extremely terrifying power surge into their two gigantic swords. Poof! Poof! Both their arms exploded into a blood mist. Their palms were torn and their fingers bled. Back in the Ling Long secret ground, even a half-martial ancestor of the god race could not defend against Su Zimo's strength. These two were only god race mighty figures and could not even defend against a single punch from Su Zimo. The two god race mighty figures could not control their bodies and retreated continuously. Something even more terrifying happened. Both of them could clearly see that the surface of their swords were filled with cracks. They were shattered by a single punch from Su Zimo. Pissed! The two god race mighty figures were shocked. How could that be considered as a body of flesh and blood? Purple thunderstorm. Su Zimo conjured hand seals and pointed at the two god race mighty figures. A purple thunderstorm formed rapidly and enveloped the two of them. Given Su Zimo's current essence spirit cultivation, the dermic art he conjured was extremely powerful to begin with. But now, the purple thunderstorm had minced the two gigantic swords of the god race completely. There were even many shards of the gigantic swords mixed in the storm, and its lethality was even more shocking as it tore the bodies of the two god race beings apart continuously. Poof! 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 Golden blood splattered continuously from the storm. In a few breaths, the storm dissipated. Two god race mighty figures fell from midair and smashed heavily onto the ground, riddled with holes. The consciousnesses of the two god race mighty figures were penetrated by a few gigantic sword fragments, and their souls were destroyed. The vicinity of God-slaying Valley descended into silence instantly. It was less than 10 breaths since Su Zimo's attack. The Kunlun Lord's head was shattered, and he died on the spot. The three god race beings were dead with their essence spirits destroyed. This was the wrath of Desolate Marshal. Chapter 1513, Fighting Side by Side. Chapter 1513, Fighting Side by Side. Everyone was silent. Even the Tao Tai and three god race beings died before extreme fire and yin qi could attack, let alone the Kunlun clansmen present. Half-martial ancestor Han Quan and the others at the entrance of the valley were both shocked and delighted. With the death of the Kunlun Lord, the Kunlun army on the other end was leaderless. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, they might not be able to hold out for long. The entire situation had reversed rapidly after Desolate Marshal appeared. Master, Yin Qi, stay here and guard the entrance of the valley. I'll help Night Spirit, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. On the side of the Rainbow Cave, more god race beings walked out, increasing their combat strength. By this point of the battle, Night Spirit was already covered in injuries. Even a taboo body could not defend against the relentless attacks of so many god race beings. Night Spirit was fighting against an unimaginably humongous civilization single-handedly. Swoosh! In a flash, Su Zimo sped towards the god-slaying valley. Intruder, how dare you? Although the Taotai was dead, he had 9 commanders under his lead who were loyal to him and were all half-martial Ancestor experts. Among them, 2 commanders leaped up and their massive bodies blanketed the skies as they lunged towards Su Zimo. The 2 commanders were pure-blooded ferocious beasts and had immense blood qi. Their claws were sharp and they released 2 innate divine powers. Instantly, the mountains collapsed and the earth shattered. Kill, kill, kill. Revenge for the Kunlun Lord. The Kunlun clansmen under the 2 commanders roared as well. Thousands of Kunlun clansmen charged over with billowing dust and war flags fluttering in a terrifying manner. Compared to the massive Kunlun army, Su Zimo's figure was incomparably tiny, as though he would be crushed the next moment without a corpse left. His expression was cold as 2 flames danced in his eyes. He said slowly, "You guys think that you can stop me?" Before his sentence was finished, Su Zimo conjured hand seals repeatedly with both hands. 3 balls of flames of different colors appeared around him instantly. Golden Buddhist Dao Fire, Scarlet Immortal Dao Fire, Black Fiend Dao Fire. Under the guidance of Su Zimo's dermic art, the 3 Dao Fires gathered rapidly. After absorbing and refining the Ashoka wood, Su Zimo's cultivation had already reached the late-stage conjoint body realm and his dermic powers were immense. A single Dao Fire was enough to kill conjoint body mighty figures. The lethality of the 3 Dao Fires was even more terrifying. The hearts of the 2 Kunlun commanders that were charging over skipped a beat as they sensed danger. However, as half-martial Ancestor experts, the 2 commanders wanted to fight Su Zimo's Samadhi Dao Fire head-on with their innate divine powers. Humph! Su Zimo sneered and struck out the Samadhi Dao Fire in his hands. At the same time, a streak of flames burst forth from his glabella and entered the Samadhi Dao Fire. It was an essence spirit fire. If it was just the Samadhi Dao Fire that descended, the 2 Kunlun commanders would be able to defend against it barely with their innate divine powers. However, after fusing with the essence spirit fire, the dermic art transformed completely and its power increased exponentially with a bright flare. The innate divine powers of the 2 Kunlun commanders were burned into nothingness by the Kacharati Dao Fire. The 2 Kunlun commanders did not even have the chance to escape. In the blink of an eye, they were devoured by the Kacharati Dao Fire and burned to ashes. Scatter! Su Zimo opened his mouth and blew in the direction of the Kacharati Dao Fire. That single breath contained the purest dermic powers. Swoosh! The Kacharati Dao Fire spread instantly, forming a firestorm that surged into the skies and swept forward. The moment the 2 Kunlun armies charged forward, countless Kunlun clansmen were engulfed by the firestorm and let out tragic cries. When the Kacharati Dao Fire was spread, its power would definitely decrease. However, it was more than enough to deal with the 2 Kunlun armies. Kunlun clansmen beneath the conjoint body realm could not defend against such power at all. Even if some Kunlun mighty figures could survive against the weakened Kacharati Dao Fire, their flesh would be split open and they would be unrecognizable. The 2 Kunlun armies suffered immense losses and were in chaos. Some of them were burned to death by the Kacharati Dao Fire. Another portion was trampled to death by other demon beasts in the chaos. In the blazing flames, countless Kunlun clansmen struggled and howled as they fled in misery. This scene resembled Avicii. A green-robed, black-haired cultivator walked through the flames with an icy expression, like a cold Yama that ruled over hell and judged life and death. The Kacharati Dao Fire burned the entire way and created a flaming passage that led to the God-slaying valley. On both sides of the flaming passage, countless Kunlun clansmen retreated. Many Kunlun clansmen looked at the figure walking on the flames with indescribable fear in their eyes. Under the illumination of the flames, their faces were incomparably pale. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo arrived at the God-slaying valley. Night Spirit stood in the middle of the valley, and there were hundreds of wounds on his body up till this point of the battle. No matter how strong his bloodline was and how shocking his regeneration capabilities were, his injuries would not heal without a chance to rest. Beast, a half-martial ancestor of the god race, stood in midair and gripped the golden sword with both hands. Give up. The light and darkness armies of God's mainland are about to enter Tianhuang mainland. That's the main force of our god race this time round. You won't be able to defend against it. Swoosh. A green beam of light tore through the air and smashed towards the god race half-martial ancestor. Slash. The god race half-martial ancestor gripped the golden sword with both hands and swung his arm, slashing forward viciously. Clang. There was a loud bang. The god race half-martial ancestor shuddered. The gigantic golden sword was sent flying. In his line of sight, he saw a jade-like, crystalline lotus platform with 7 petals blossoming layer by layer. Although it looked weak, it emanated an extremely powerful might. The creation green lotus. What a great treasure! Although the god race half-martial ancestor lost the gigantic sword in his hands, he was delighted instead of enraged. When he saw the creation green lotus before him, his blood chi burst forth and his bloodline phenomenon surged, suppressing the creation green lotus. This half-martial ancestor of the god race wanted to take the creation green lotus for himself. You overestimate yourself. Su Zimo walked over slowly with a cold glint in his eyes. He channeled his spirit consciousness and the creation green lotus spun continuously, emitting a bedazzling green glow that riddled the pyramid phenomenon of the god race half-martial ancestor with holes. Su Zimo's cultivation was not the only thing that increased by absorbing and refining the Ashoka wood. Be it the green lotus true body or the creation lotus platform, both underwent an extremely obvious transformation. The god race half-martial ancestor was alarmed when his bloodline phenomenon shattered. It was only now that he truly realized the danger and wanted to retreat. However, Su Zimo would not give him that chance. With a thought of his spirit consciousness, the creation green lotus transformed into a green streak of light and smashed the head of the god race half-martial ancestor. The latter died on the spot with his essence spirit destroyed. Kill. Many god race beings hollered and changed directions at the same time, charging towards Su Zimo. The death of a half-martial ancestor of the god race could not intimidate the advancement of the other god race beings. After all, there were only 2 people in the valley. However, the 2 armies of the god race were about to arrive. Su Zimo and Night Spirit exchanged glances. There was no fear in their eyes. Instead, there was endless excitement and passion. The 2 of them were fighting side by side. There was nothing to fear even against a massive army. Chapter 1514, Rebirth. Chapter 1514, Rebirth. 100 god race beings charged forward and released their bloodline phenomenons one after another. Ancient pyramids appeared in midair with a terrifying might that was extremely shocking. Millions of living beings prostrated beneath the 100 pyramids and prayed fervently with pious expressions. The god race beings spread their arms and stood on the pyramid like true gods. Their bodies shone with a blinding golden light. Barbarians of the East, aren't you going to submit? A god race being pointed at the millions of living beings beneath the pyramid and hollered, as long as you submit to the god race, you'll be protected by the god race just like these living beings. If you resist, your corpses will be suppressed in the pyramid for all eternity and will not reincarnate, receiving the judgment of God. A look of realization flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. The millions of living beings that submitted to the pyramid of the god race should be phantoms left behind after God's mainland conquered other continents. In the primordial era, if the divine house did not stand in the way of the god race here, there was a high chance that the millions of living beings in Tianhuang mainland would suffer the same fate as them. They would be enslaved by the god race for all eternity. The living beings kneeling around the pyramid had pious expressions. They had already forgotten about resisting deep in their bones. The imprint of enslavement had already fused into their souls and bloodlines. At the thought of that, Su Zimo's eyes turned even colder. You are merely some weak pseudo-gods. Su Zimo said slowly, even if you guys are true gods, if you dare to step foot onto Tianhuang mainland, I'll drag you down from the clouds and crush your bones. The moment he said that, Su Zimo's hand seals changed continuously. Dermic arts were released one after another in a fluid motion that was bedazzling. Sea Burial Secret Skill, Apocalyptic Fiend Fist, Mighty Heavenly Dragon Transcendence, Sandstorm, Great Sanskrit Light Fist, Avicii. More than 30 dermic arts and secret skills were conjured in Su Zimo's hands in the blink of an eye, arriving like an apocalyptic torrent. Given Su Zimo's current cultivation, a single dermic art was enough to kill a god race mighty figure. But now, it was equivalent to more than 30 Su Zimos attacking and releasing dermic arts at the same time. The impact was even more terrifying than the 100 bloodline phenomenons of the god race. Bang, bang, bang. The torrent formed by more than 30 dermic arts and secret skills collided against the 100 bloodline phenomenons and let out a deafening bang. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared and shattered on the ancient pyramids that hovered in midair. The bloodline phenomenons of the god race mighty figures could no longer defend against Su Zimo's dermic arts torrent. Poof, poof, poof. The god race mighty figures had dim expressions and retreated with blood spewing, their eyes filled with shock. They had expected Night Spirit to be strong. However, the god race beings had not expected that the weak human before them could wield such terrifying power. Even their bloodline phenomenons could not withstand it. Is this the cultivation civilization of Tianhuang Mainland? Some of the god race beings were shocked, and the way they looked at Su Zimo changed as well. Flashes of blood appeared. A god race being's head was crushed by a sharp claw on the spot, and his spirit was destroyed as his headless corpse fell from midair. Before the god race beings could react, a blurry figure flashed. Ah! Immediately after, a short shriek sounded. Another god race being was dead. Night Spirit had attacked. The moment Su Zimo's dermic art torrent clashed against the bloodline phenomenons of the god race and ended, Night Spirit had already infiltrated the god race crowd silently. Night Spirit's terror was only fully revealed at this moment. Prior to this, Night Spirit was alone in the middle of the valley and could only fight against many god race beings head-on, unable to unleash the advantage of the divine Hous race. But now, with Su Zimo fighting against many god race beings, and had created a perfect killing environment for Night Spirit, poof, 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 flashes of blood appeared continuously. When Night Spirit walked through the god race, he was like the god of massacre in the darkness. The god race beings with their shattered bloodline phenomenons could not defend against Night Spirit's attacks at all. In less than a dozen breaths, more than half of the 100 god race beings that were killed, Su Zimo made a move as well. His essence spirit was fused with the essence of the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sections. With a single thought of his spirit consciousness, his dermic powers could reach the legendary state of being boundless. Even though he had just released the Kacharati Dao Fire and more than 30 dermic arts, the power of his essence spirit was still extremely strong under the nourishment of the creation lotus platform. Su Zimo closed his sword finger and slashed forward gently. Tsk, tsk, tsk. Dozens of heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth and enveloped the god race beings on the other end. The sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi was way too immense. Even with their bloodline phenomenons, these god race beings could not defend against it, let alone the fact that they had no bloodline phenomenons now. Corpses of the god race fell from midair one after another. Under the combined forces of Su Zimo and Night Spirit, the god race beings in the valley gradually retreated. It was not because they wanted to retreat, but because they had no other choice. Su Zimo attacked repeatedly, and Night Spirit roamed the darkness with erratic movements. Many god race mighty figures could not clone themselves and could not take care of both ends. The moment the god race beings relaxed their minds, they would definitely be met with fatal danger. Roar! Right then, an enraged roar sounded from the back of the valley. There were even screams mixed in the roar. MMM? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he turned back. Outside the valley, there was a gigantic demon beast that was 1,000 feet tall. It was indomitable and its body was grayish-black. It had a goat's body and a face without eyes. The aura of the demon beast was terrifying, and it had a terrifying gigantic mouth that seemed like it could devour everything. Waving its sharp claws, it killed the Kunlun clansmen with purple gold ribbons and dispersed the entire place. Even extreme fire and yin qi could not suppress the ferocious flames of this demon beast and retreated continuously. The Taotai. That demon beast was the Kunlun lord who had just died in Su Zimo's hands. But now, the Taotai had revived. Impossible. Su Zimo frowned. Earlier on, he had already torn off the Taotai's arms and smashed his chest. It was understandable if the Taotai could recover from those injuries. However, earlier on, the Taotai's head and consciousness were shattered by the Creation Lotus platform. Even with the protection of his essence spirit dermic weapon, the Taotai could not defend against it. How did this Taotai revive? Desolate marshal. The Taotai howled into the skies with endless hatred and rage. I'm going to tear you into pieces and burn your bones into ashes. Humph. Su Zimo's expression was cold as he said coldly, Taotai, if I can kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Let's see how many lives you have left. The Taotai had revived and was leading the Kunlun army to attack the entrance of the valley. However, extreme fire, Nianxi and the others could not defend at all. Su Zimo was no longer conflicted about the secret of the Taotai's resurrection and was prepared to make a move to return and kill the latter once more. Right then, an extremely terrifying aura burst forth from the rainbow cave at the end of the valley. The void above the valley trembled. Chapter 15:15, Light Army. Chapter 15:15, Light Army. Within the cave that shone with a rainbow luster, a group of god race riders that rode on horses and wore golden armor walked out slowly. The horses they were riding were wrapped in golden armor, revealing only a pair of cold eyes. These were no ordinary horses. On both sides of their bodies were snow-white wings, and there was even a sharp horn protruding from their heads as they flew slowly in midair. The riders of the god race wielded golden swords and glared at Su Zimo and Night Spirit coldly. Ha 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 ha. A god race being roared in laughter. Barbarians of Tianhuang Mainland, you guys are finished. The light army of our god's mainland has already arrived in Tianhuang Mainland. The darkness army will come right after. The god race riders walked out slowly, and each of them shone with an endless brilliance that was bedazzling. Most of those god race riders were at the conjoint body realm. Among them were even half-martial ancestor experts. The half-martial ancestors of the god race rode on their heavenly horses as well. However, they wielded spears with golden patterns and had terrifying auras. The most terrifying thing was that this was an army formed by the mighty figures of the god and half-martial ancestors of the god race. They were orderly and filled with a steely killing intent. After entering the valley, there was no surprise in the eyes of the god race riders when they saw the corpses strewn on the ground. They were expressionless the entire time. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of god race riders entered the valley. There were only slightly more than 1,000 people in the light army. Those who could enter the light army were all the strongest geniuses of God's mainland. Every single horseman of the light army could sweep through any one of the same cultivation realm and dominate a place. The lethality of an iron-blooded army formed by so many god race riders was unimaginable. Furthermore, be it the armor or weapons of the god race riders, they were created by the top sword refinement masters of God's mainland. This light army could even kill the Kunlun army that consisted of tens of millions of troops. Night Spirit had a grim expression. He knew that the test for them had just begun. The god race beings before them were nothing much. The light army was the one that represented the peak of God's mainland civilization. Behind the light army was a darkness army that had yet to appear. What would the situation be like after both armies arrived? At the entrance of the valley, the Taotai had revived and was closing in with the Kunlun army. Between Su Zimo and Night Spirit, one of them had to deal with the Taotai. Night Spirit, go and get rid of the Taotai. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and made a decision quickly. I'll defend against the God Race's light army. Comparing between the front and back of the valley, the God Race beings here were definitely more dangerous. Behind them were merely the forces of the Kunlun ruins. However, on the side of the God Race was the power of the entire God's mainland. Su Zimo had pushed himself onto a cliff by making that choice. Brother, Night Spirit wanted to reject but was interrupted by Su Zimo the moment he spoke. Night Spirit. Su Zimo looked at Night Spirit and said in a deep voice, "You're the only one suitable to resolve the matter of the Kunlun ruins. You're the only one who can suppress the Kunlun race." In terms of bloodline and origin, Night Spirit was the true Kunlun lord. There was an unresolvable feud and conflict between him and the Tao Tai. The two of them had to fight to the death. Once the Tao Tai died, there was a high chance that Night Spirit would suppress the remaining Kunlun clansmen with his prestige. However, it was different for Su Zimo. Those Kunlun clansmen did not agree with Su Zimo at all. Even if the Tao Tai died, the Kunlun race would not listen to Su Zimo. If Su Zimo were to deal with the Kunlun army, he would only be able to conduct a massacre that would not benefit the entire situation. Su Zimo said, "Night Spirit, you have to kill the Tao Tai with lightning methods and subdue the other Kunlun clansmen before you can rush back to help me." "I got it." Night Spirit nodded. "Don't worry before you return. I'll definitely guard the God-slaying valley and not let a single God race being off." Su Zimo's tone was resolute. After a brief pause, he instructed, "Also, you have to be careful. This Tao Tai has some tricks up his sleeves. I smashed his head earlier on, but he's not dead and even revived. I suspect that the Tao Tai's essence spirit might not be residing in his consciousness." "Don't worry, brother." After saying that, Night Spirit's figure flashed and he vanished from the spot. When he reappeared, he was at the entrance of the valley. It was a race against time. The sooner he killed the Tao Tai and controlled all the Kunlun clansmen, the sooner he could rush back to help Su Zimo. "Barbarian of the East, I'll give you a chance. Submit to me now, and I can take you under my wing as a personal guard." A half-martial ancestor of the God race wielded a spear and rode on a heavenly horse. He walked out slowly and looked down at Su Zimo. At that moment, the light army had already entered the valley with 1,000 people. Among them, there were dozens of half-martial ancestor experts alone. The others were all conjoint body mighty figures. The God race half-martial ancestor said proudly, "I'll guide you personally and teach you the noble civilization of the God race so that you can break free from your status as a barbarian." "Fu," Su Zimo sneered. "That's all there is to the methods of the God race. You can't even cross this valley after entering Tianhuang Mainland twice. How dare you spout nonsense in front of me?" The expressions of the God race beings from the Light Army darkened. The primordial war was the eternal humiliation of God's mainland. God's mainland had conquered many worlds and occupied countless territories, enslaving millions of living beings. There had never been such a crushing defeat. The reason why they made a comeback today was to erase the shame of the primordial era. "Barbarian of the East, you've successfully enraged me." The God race half-martial ancestor raised the spear in his hands slowly and pointed at Su Zimo with a golden glow. "Now, even if you kneel before me, I won't let you off. Today, I'll let you witness the power of my light army." Before his sentence was finished, the spear in the hands of the God race half-martial ancestor suddenly shone with a golden light. At the same time, every single God race soldier of the light army drew their swords in unison. Golden lights burst forth from their swords. 1,000 golden beams gathered in midair and formed a golden spear that was dozens of feet long in the blink of an eye. It crossed the air and emitted a shuddering aura. Narrowing his gaze slightly, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. That spear was not the power of one or two God race beings. It was a secret skill that fused the power of the entire light army. Even Su Zimo felt his scalp tingle from the gigantic golden spear. Suddenly, a warning flashed in Su Zimo's mind. There was no time to think. Electric arcs appeared on Su Zimo's body, and a pair of dermic power wings appeared behind him. Finally, His figure transformed into a streak of golden lightning and vanished on the spot. Ethereal wings, lightning escape, and boundless golden light. Su Zimo's speed was at its limits after the fusion of the 3 escape techniques. Chapter 15:16, Charge. Chapter 15:16, Charge. Boom! The gigantic golden spear pierced through Su Zimo's afterimage and smashed against a valley not far away, letting out a deafening bang. Countless rocks rolled down and the entire valley shook as dust billowed. Su Zimo's figure reappeared. A grim look flashed through his eyes. The attack of the Light Army was enough to threaten his life. If he had not dodged in time earlier on, even his grade 7 Green Lotus true body would not have been able to escape unscathed and would have been severely injured. "And let's see where else you can hide." The God Race half-martial ancestor sneered and raised the spear in his hands once more. "Charge!" The God Race half-martial ancestor ordered. The Light Army that was initially silent and motionless suddenly circulated. Thousands of heavenly horses flapped their wings, causing wild winds to howl as they rode on auspicious clouds and charged over. Many God Race riders wielded gigantic swords and charged forward with an incomparable aura towards Su Zimo. The heavenly horses galloped and their iron hooves sounded, causing the entire void to tremble. Against that impact, even Night Spirit and Su Zimo would not be able to defend against it, let alone the Green Lotus true body. Su Zimo had a calm expression as he thought of a strategy. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer he had to be. If it was a normal fight, he could rely on his movement techniques, speed to maneuver around the Light Army instead of fighting them head-on. However, the place he was standing right now was called the God-Slaying Valley. The reason why the God-Slaying Valley was notorious was because the Divine House massacred the God Race in the Primordial War. If he retreated, the Light Army would advance and join forces with the Tao Tai, Night Spirit, Extreme Fire, Nian Qi, and the others would definitely lose. At that time, even if he had countless methods, he would not be able to hold out. He had to kill the Light Army in the God-Slaying Valley. Su Zimo slapped his storage bag and a jade-green longbow appeared in his hands. It was the ancient unique treasure, the Dermic-breaking bow. Standing in midair, Su Zimo's gaze was burning as he drew the Dermic-breaking bow. Dermic powers gathered wildly at his fingertips, and in the blink of an eye, a Dermic power arrow appeared on the bowstring. Swoosh! His bow was like a full moon, and the arrows were like shooting stars. The arrow tore through the air and arrived instantly, shooting towards the God Race half-martial ancestor in the lead. A look of surprise flashed through the eyes of the God Race half-martial ancestor. However, that surprise vanished in the blink of an eye, and he returned to his old, emotionless self. In a flash, the God Race half-martial ancestor raised the spear in his hands and pushed gently in front of him, colliding with the Dermic power arrow. Buzz! The Dermic power arrow rubbed against the spear of the God Race half-martial ancestor and let out an ear-piercing sound with sparks flying. The reaction of the God Race half-martial ancestor was way too fast. He was also sufficiently strong. Back when Su Zimo was still at the early stage conjoint body realm, he was unable to escape unscathed from a Dermic power arrow of the Dermic-breaking bow, and his Green Lotus true body was injured. In front of Enigma Palace, Su Zimo wielded the Dermic-breaking bow and shot down many mighty figures of Enigma Palace. Even half-martial ancestors could not defend against him. However, this half-martial ancestor of the God Race could attack in time. Although he could not defend against the Dermic power arrow completely, the spear changed the direction of the Dermic power arrow and it brushed past him. When the God Race half-martial ancestor made a move, he negated the Dermic-breaking bow almost perfectly. Su Zimo was expressionless. That was because although the arrow did not manage to kill the God Race half-martial ancestor, when the latter blocked and changed its direction, it shot into the crowd behind him instantly. A flash of blood appeared. In the Light Army, a God Race rider's glabella was pierced by the Dermic power arrow, and his head exploded instantly. He fell from his horse and died on the spot. Although the God Race half-martial ancestor could react to it, the mighty figure behind him was caught off guard. However, the loss of a God Race Rider was insignificant for the entire light army. The other God Race Riders had cold, expressionless expressions the entire time. The speed of the light army did not decrease at all. Shield. The half-martial ancestor of the God Race in the lead raised his spear and shouted without a change in expression. Before his sentence was finished, apart from the spear-wielding half-martial ancestor of the God Race, a thick shield shone with a golden glow on the left hand of the other God Race mighty figures. The God Race riders wielded swords in their right hands and shields in their left. They rode on their heavenly horses and continued charging with cold expressions. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Su Zimo tugged the dermic breaking bow repeatedly. Dermic power arrows tore through the air. This time round, Su Zimo did not target the God Race half-martial ancestors with the spears. Instead, he targeted the God Race riders with the sword and shield. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing echoed repeatedly. Within the light army, the God Race riders were shot down by the dermic breaking bow one after another. However, no more bloodlight appeared. Before long, those God Race riders leaped into the air once more and returned to their heavenly horses as they continued charging forward with an intensified coldness in their eyes. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. The God Race riders were all clad in heavy armor and were shielded by the gigantic golden shield. None of them revealed any weaknesses. Although his dermic breaking bow was strong and fast enough to shoot the God Race riders, it could not penetrate their armor. Even if some God Race riders were injured, their vitals were not hurt. Given the regeneration capabilities of the God Race's bloodline, they would be able to recover his combat strength before long and rejoin the charging army. Even after shooting more than 10 arrows in succession, he failed to stop their charge. Instead, the distance between them closed in continuously. Ha 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 ha. The God Race half-martial ancestor roared in laughter and mocked. Barbarian of Tianhuang Mainland, you think you can stop the conquest of the light army with a single lousy bow? You're truly fearless in your ignorance. Su Zimo's expression was calm, and he was not discouraged. He drew his dermic breaking bow once more and shot more than 10 arrows. With the help of the Creation Lotus platform, as long as his essence spirit was strong and his dermic powers were rich, he could shoot dermic power arrows continuously. This time round, Su Zimo's arrows were not aimed at the God Race riders. It was aimed at the heavenly horses of the God Race riders. The heavenly horses were also clad in armor, but their eyes were revealed. If the dermic power arrows could shoot through the eyes of the heavenly horses, the power of the arrows would be enough to destroy their essence spirits. Once the heavenly horses were dead, the light army would definitely be in chaos, and their charging momentum would naturally stop. Poof! True enough, a heavenly horse could not dodge in time and was pierced in the eye by a dermic power arrow. Instantly, its head was penetrated and its essence spirit was destroyed. With a boom, its massive body fell. This time round, there was quite a bit of chaos in the light army, and the speed of their charge decreased slightly. Change formation, spear, and shield formation. The God Race half-martial ancestor raised his spear and hollered softly. When the many God Race riders heard the order, they sprawled on the heavenly horses and stuck close to its back, protecting it with the gigantic golden shield in their hands. As such, the gigantic golden shield protected the heavenly horses and God Race riders at the back completely without any openings. As for the other half-martial ancestors of the God Race, they raised their spears and led the God Race riders behind them to charge once more. The God Race half-martial ancestors raised their spears while the God Race riders wielded their shields. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the entire light army shone with a bedazzling glow and charged towards the God-slaying valley like an indestructible all. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.